So I'm going to go ahead and get started. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining tonight's call. My name is Mark Jorfi. I'm the mayor of Morris Township, and I'm joined tonight by Deputy Mayor Kathy Wilson, our Township Administrator Tim Quinn, Township Engineer Jim Slate, and Assistant Township Engineer Bernie Sanger. The focus of tonight's Zoom meeting is for our professionals to speak directly with the residents of Normandy Parkway on the proposed project on their street. Prior to COVID, meetings such as these typically would happen in the municipal building for residents to view the engineering department's proposal and provide input directly. We held a similar Zoom meeting in this fashion about 6 months ago for an upcoming reconstruction project in Fairchild. These meetings allow our engineer to speak to the impacts of the proposed project directly to homeowners and answer their questions specific to the proposal as it relates to their property and the direct area to their property. What's great about Zoom, though, is that Mr. Slate will be able to bring up the map and zoom in if you have very specific questions to the plan. Before I turn it over to Mr. Slate, I do want to provide some background on how we got to this proposal. I, along with other members of our governing body, have received many emails from residents, and my aim is to clarify a few items before Mr. Slate gets into his presentation. Specifically as it relates to the sidewalk and bike lane proposal. Installing a sidewalk on Normandy Parkway was first proposed to the Township Committee back in 2008 as part of the Trails and Pathways Plan published by the Township's Trails Committee. The proposal for sidewalks then moved a step forward in 2017 as part of the Planning Board's Master Plan re-examination process. Using the Master Plan as a guide and resource, as a standard for infrastructure work such as this, the Township Committee provided initial funding for the Normandy Parkway Improvement Project as part of our 2021 budget. We received a grant from the state to help pay for this project in the same year, and will provide the balance of the funding in our 2022 capital budget. After drafting the initial proposal, our engineering department sent a letter in December to homeowners directly impacted for their input and to answer their questions. It is my understanding that Mr. Slate has responded to and visited many homeowners on Normandy Parkway since the letter was distributed about a month ago. Earlier in the month, Mr. Slate also provided a courtesy review of the proposal to our Transportation Advisory Committee. This group of volunteers serves on an advisory basis to the Township Committee and does not have jurisdiction over this project. Making our community safer for pedestrians and bicyclists has been the top priority for our governing body since 2019. Road improvement projects such as the proposal we are speaking about tonight provides the township the best opportunity to make Morris Township more walkable and bikeable in the most affordable way. Making our community more walkable and bikeable is not just a priority for our governing body, but also a majority of our residents. The results from our mobility survey of residents from 2020 states that neighbors from across the township want our community to be safer for pedestrians and bicyclists alike, while making the streets safer through traffic calming techniques. 2/3 of our residents said they wanted to see more sidewalks and paths. 70% wanted travel lanes for cyclists and pedestrians on our streets. Some additional items I would like to clarify before I hand it over to Jim. Our engineering department anticipates that the majority of trees on Normandy Parkway will be able to be preserved by having the proposed sidewalk go around them. As of now, about 6 trees are anticipated to be removed near the intersection of Columbia Road. As part of our tree replacement initiative, homeowners both directly impacted and indirectly impacted who live on Normandy will have the opportunity to accept new trees for their property frontage, if desired, at no cost to them. The engineering department will be submitting this proposal to the State Historic Preservation Office for their review before work commences, and will take their input into consideration should any be received. Additionally, related to the historic nature of Normandy Parkway, gas lamps, along with their utilities, will be left unchanged. In relation to the concern about the widths of the lanes, the reduction of the width of the lanes will not restrict travel or emergency vehicles on Normandy Parkway as it is permissible by the state. And on a side note, 3 of us here tonight can actually vouch for that personally as individuals who have responded in emergency vehicles as operators as first responders. Given the number of residents on the call, when we get into the Q&A section, we will first take questions from residents who live on Normandy Parkway and are directly impacted. As I stated earlier, this meeting is to allow them time with our engineer to answer questions, and he'll be able to bring up the proposal on screen, as I stated before. After folks on Normandy Parkway are able to ask their questions, then we'll turn it over to other attendees. With that, if I missed anything, Kathy, Tim, or Jim, or Bernie, feel free to add in. If not, I will turn it over to Jim to run his presentation.
Okay, I'm going to call up the plans and give an overview. You guys got that up, the cover sheet for the plans?
Yep.
So by way of an overview, the project extends from Washington Avenue on the southern end of the project and ends at Columbia with the paving. The overall project is for the milling and paving of that portion of the roadway and to also extend sidewalks along the north side of the roadway. The sidewalk will provide a link. There's existing sidewalks that run from Washington Avenue on both sides of Normandy Parkway, from Washington Avenue to Kenilworth and the Normandy neighborhood to the south. We will also be extending the sidewalk. It's not shown on these plans, but there's a missing link of sidewalk from Columbia Road to the main entrance further to the east in front of the Morris Museum. There's no widening of the roadway that's proposed. The existing curb would remain. Our proposal as part of the project is to replace any curb that's in poor shape. On each driveway entrance where the sidewalk would run along the north side of the road, there'll be a concrete apron. Obviously, the sidewalk would extend, through the driveway. And if there's any existing, I know there's at least one driveway that's constructed with, a Belgian block apron that sidewalk would run through the driveway, but we would restore the Belgian block to match the grade of the sidewalk. We did look at, sidewalk could really go on either side of the roadway, but as we got down, when we initially looked at the sidewalk installation, on both sides of the roadway, the decision was made to go on the north side of the roadway because as you approach Columbia Road on the south side, there's some slopes that need to be dealt with, and we would need a retaining wall on the back side of the wall. So the decision was made to move the sidewalk to the north side of the road to not have to deal with an added expense and work related to a retaining wall. Our initial plans, I think everyone knows that the plan's been posted on the township's website. The initial plans posted showed more tree removal. If you look on the what happened there, but if you look on the plans, they initially, I'm going to close that out and just restart. They initially showed more tree removal, and the plan was always to just kind of work. I'm not sure what happened with that. Work around the trees. So we improved, the plan and removed the removals on a majority of the trees. That's the problem. Just go back. Apologize for this. Not quite sure why we dropped that out.
Jim, if you bring it up, it looked like it was zoomed into 28%. It might just be zoomed into a blank spot on the sheet.
All right, you know what I did? I closed out the that file. I don't want to close out the Zoom. So to reopen that, just trying to. Apologize for this, everyone. Just not seeing a thumb drive for some reason.
Bernie, are you able to bring it up on your own?
Yeah, I don't have access to the PDF. Let me see. I can try and get it off the website.
Again, apologize for that. Well, Bernie, if you can work on that, I'll just kind of continue to go through my presentation. So we initially had shown trees that potentially could be removed along the length of the project, associated with the sidewalk. And we added a note to the plan, and our plan was always to work around those trees, but the most latest revision to the plan shows 6 or so trees to be removed, mainly down by the intersection. There's a couple where we have to do a crossing on the south side of the intersection at Columbia, and there's also a grade change on the north side of the road just east of Featherly that requires some grading, and we're showing 4 trees to be removed in that location. If we have the ability, when we get into the construction, we're anticipating some disturbance of the root system at that location. So if we can, save those trees, we can. But we anticipate during the entire length of the rest of the project, we can just work around the existing trees. One of the neighbors had made a suggestion about some air spading as a way to excavate dirt around the root systems, and we plan on using care to save those existing trees. And one of the problems that we do run into with contractors get a little aggressive with the excavator, and they tend to want to just rip roots out with the excavator. But with the use of the air spade, and if we cut the roots, we've made it very clear in the specifications that the contractor's got to follow these guidelines. And if we cut the roots and use care, we won't be damaging the trees as much as a contractor has problems we've had in the past. We want to avoid that. There's no plans to move or remove any of the gas lights, as the mayor had mentioned, that none of the pillars would be affected. The main proposal is for the sidewalk to be a 4-foot grass strip behind the curb, and then a 4-foot wide concrete sidewalk to run along the length of the project. There are crosswalks proposed at Featherly, the Normandy Park School entrance, and there's the existing crosswalk at the Normandy neighborhood. Kenilworth, I'm sorry, I was drawing a blank on Kenilworth. There was a request to put in some flashing signage at the Kenilworth location. Maybe you may have seen some of that. There's LEDs that signs have been installed. They've seen at different locations where there's LEDs to highlight the sign. That's something that we were going to investigate for that Kenilworth location. It was a request that was made by one of the residents. The proposal is to stripe the roadway with 11-foot wide travel lanes for the motorist. Typical roadway would have a 12-foot lane, but the 11-foot lane helps reduce the lane width. We've done this on other roadways, and it's proven to help reduce the speed on the roadway. There will be, so you'll have a centerline stripe, 11-foot wide lane. There'll be a 6-inch wide edge line, 1.5-foot wide striped buffer, and that adjacent to that will be a 5-foot wide striped bike lane on both sides of the roadway. Just by way of background, the township received state aid in the amount of $291,000 for the project. Once the plans are complete, we'd send the whole package down to the state for review. And as the mayor mentioned, we would send it also to SHPO, that's State Historic Preservation Office, for their review. Overall project estimate is $590,000. Question came up about the historic district signs. We actually have those signs to be replaced. We're just waiting for the project to be completed. That's something that the Township DPW would be doing. Just by way of information, I did have a brief conversation with the Morris County Historical Society and a member of the Morris Township Historic Preservation Commission, and I did let them know that the plans would be going down to State Historic Preservation Office as part of the review, and they were both satisfied that they're the agency that's best suited to review it as it relates to the historic district. I did want to note that we looked at some old, as part of this project, we looked at some old traffic studies, and there was at some point, I don't know when exactly it was, that we did add the edge line striping on the roadway. Originally, there was just a center line stripe. At some point, I don't know when exactly that was, a few years back, we did add edge line striping. And just by way of background, just want to let people know that just the adding of that striping did reduce speeds. We did have average speeds, what's known as the 85th percentile speed, which is what a majority of the traffic on the roadway is comfortable traveling. Those speeds were in the ballpark of 45 miles an hour. After we did add that edge line striping, the speed was reduced closer to 40 miles an hour. What was interesting too, as I noted in some of the information that the police department provided, I was not aware of this, that years ago, the speed limit on the roadway was 50 miles an hour. Wow. We do plan, I would anticipate that with the 11-foot wide striping and the addition of the bike lanes on the roadway, we would anticipate some additional speed reductions on the roadway. And, you know, a few residents did ask about the possibility of lowering the speed. You know, that may be an option if cars slow down on the roadway, not making any promises. It's not part of this project, but after the improvements are installed, we would do another speed study and see if there's that option to lower the speed. I mean, that's been a big concern with everyone that I've talked to is the speed at which cars travel on the roadway. As the mayor mentioned, there's been concern raised by a couple of residents that this route is emergency response route. You know, our project would have no effect, you know, on that. Don't anticipate any problem. 11-foot lane is something that's approved by DOT and fairly standard. And realistically, emergency vehicles would have the whole roadway to work with. You know, there was another suggestion that a resident had mentioned to me about the possibility of moving bike traffic to the old Honeywell development, Prescott Drive and Stockton Drive. Just would like residents to know that that's a private development and it's not something that the township can route traffic through. As far as the township's right-of-way on Normandy, it's a 66-foot wide right-of-way. The existing road is about 35 feet wide. So there's about 15 feet behind the existing curb line. That's the township's right-of-way. That would be the area that we'd be working with for the installation of the sidewalk. As the mayor had mentioned, some residents had requested additional tree plantings. Not quite sure, how we're going to handle that at this point. I'm not always a big fan of putting tree planting in with a contractor that's doing milling, paving, and concrete work. They tend to not be the best landscapers. So it may be a separate contract where we would send a letter out to the neighbors afterwards. And if anyone's interested in doing a tree or adding a tree along their frontage, we would do that with a landscape contractor. But we'll do some more follow-up and keep everyone posted on that. So I guess at this point, I would like to open it up to the residents. Would like to, hear from the residents first on, along the roadway, to be able to answer their questions and get their feedback. And then once we get through the residents, then we would move on with, any neighbors or other residents that are in the neighborhood but not directly affected along the roadway. Bernie, any luck? Again, I apologize for everyone for losing the.
Yeah, I was able to download it, but I don't know if I have the ability to share it. I'll try and share it here.
So if you do the share screen as a participant, you should be able to bring that up. Okay.
See it.
Now I'm just going to go over to the residents list and I see the first hand raised is Elizabeth Nader.
Hi, yes, Elizabeth Nader, 24 Normandy Parkway. I've been watching some of the debate and letters going back and forth. Today, some letters were put in my mailbox from someone whose front lawn is not going to be affected and someone who is not getting the sidewalk on their side of the street. So ironically, they're in support. I am the one with the Belgian block. I am the one with the beautiful pillars entering my driveway. So first of all, I want to confirm that you intend to take out my Belgian block as the size of the apron. How far in is that?
So there would be a 4-foot wide strip for the sidewalk to extend, through your driveway, but we would, maintain the Belgian block on either side.
Okay. And then regarding, I'm sure you've looked at our beautiful stone pillars. What is happening to those?
Nothing would happen with those.
It doesn't affect those at all. Even they extend, you know what I'm talking about specifically?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We would, that's obviously something that we don't want to mess with. So the sidewalk would be, in front of them. They're beautiful pillars and no plan to mess with those.
Okay. Well, I would like that in writing because that's not what I've been told by other people. I have been shown documents where it shows demolition of my pillars. So how do I get that in writing?
You have my word.
Well,
I don't know who's telling you that it would be demolished. I mean, I do see that there's some misinformation, kind of being circulated out there. But our plan is to not mess with any of those pillars and work the sidewalk around it.
The proposed plan does show the sidewalk in front of the pillars for all the driveways that have pillars.
So you'll just remove the Belgian block 4 feet in to the side. What the extent is 4 feet?
Well, the sidewalk to meet ADA standards would be 4 foot wide. And then if there's a grade change as a result of where the sidewalk, goes through the driveway, if we need to, reset the Belgian block, we would reset that to match in.
Okay, thank you. The other thing I just wanted to say, buying this home on this street was a purposeful decision based on the seclusion of the street based on the fact that it was not a neighborhood, based on the fact that it didn't have people walking by. That was a purposeful choice by us, and I'm sure others may speak to that. I would just like to let everyone know who's making that decision that that entirely changes the way that we feel our house is on this street, that it will invite people to walk past the house, that will encourage things that we didn't want to have, which is why we chose this. We didn't choose Washington headquarters behind us. It's an entirely different experience to live on Normandy Parkway. So I'm concerned. I'm not happy about this. I am not in favor of it. And it changes the way and the reasons why we chose this neighborhood.
All right. Well, thanks for the feedback, and you know, we'll be in you know, discussions as things move forward, and as we get into the you know, the construction, you know, we'll be working with you just to make sure you're, you know, happy with everything as we progress. Thank you for your feedback.
Thank you.
David Cupo, next, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, good. A couple things I had questions about. You covered a lot of my concerns. I appreciate it. I live at 4A, so I do have sidewalks already. So I have a little bit of experience of what's going on. A couple things. You said, is there a possibility of adding more gas lights on the street, particularly down at our end?
No, there's no plans to add gas lights. We've made that request before. They're maintained by PSE&G, and you know, we've had no luck with you know, our previous request to add those gas lights.
Yeah, I know.
We even have a tough time getting them to maintain the existing ones, but
yeah,
you know,
neither have I, because Kenilworth is kind of dark. Anyway,
and I'm sorry, Mr. Cupo, can I have your address again, please?
yeah, 4A, block 8902.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah. I noticed on the plans you don't have any crosswalk at Washington going to the traction line, and there's a lot of people that try to cross there. You have crosswalk going across Washington Avenue, but not crossing Normandy Parkway to get to the entrance of the traction line. And that's
So
really the only entrance to the traction line from Washington, unless you go to the other end of the street, or you cut across into Normandy Boulevard and cut through somebody's yard to get in back way. So is there any thoughts about adding a crosswalk there?
No, and the problem is there's limited sight distance as you come up over the crest of the bridge. So I recall that there's some depressed curb there, because there may have been a crosswalk there previously, but we looked at that, and the reason the sidewalk was extended previously down to Kenilworth was to move pedestrians to a safe cross location. So the crossing at that location is just not safe because there's inadequate sight distance.
Okay, so are you going to put some kind of sign there that says if you want to cross, go to Kenilworth or anything? I mean, people still try to cross there. I just kind of concerned.
We'll be removing the depressed curb at that location. I don't know, you know, listen, people are, if people want to try and risk it and cross there, they're still going to do that even if there's a sign there. So I don't see us putting a sign up. I think that, you know, the fact that there's a marked crosswalk towards Kenilworth should really, you know,
Okay.
people should be directed that way.
Right, I understand. Okay, so how many studies have there been with bicycle paths next to a 40-mile-an-hour road? Because I have talked to you a few times about lowering the speed on Kenilworth. It boggles my mind that that Normandy Parkway is the same speed as Columbia Turnpike. So, and we talked about it, and you know, understand it's tough to get changed, but I'm just wondering if there's been any studies.
So the last study, the speed study that was completed on the roadway was in 2018. And, you know, what those speeds are based on is what speeds people are comfortable with traveling on the roadway. And that's known as the 85th percentile. If, you know, we can't artificially lower the speed because, you know, we could, okay, if we put the speed at 25 miles an hour, 35 miles an hour, people will still, a majority of the public traveling on that roadway will still be going 40 miles an hour. And what I'm hoping is that the striping and the addition of the bike lanes, the crosswalks as well, those type of things help slow people down. And if we do a speed study down the line and we show that the 85th percentile is now down to 35, that's something that, we can make a request to the township committee to lower that. But, we need to slow the cars down in order to achieve that.
Okay. All right. Another question. Right where I'm at is where the road curves. And a lot of people, when they come down Normandy, they tend to drop into the curve and cross over the line. And I'm wondering, with bicyclists there, I'm wondering if you've got any provision in there for a little, etching of the roadway to kind of like a rumble strip kind of thing to keep people, to remind them, hey, you're crossing the line, to stay back into the lane. Have you thought about that?
I generally am not a fan of them whatsoever. I think that, they tend to make a lot of noise. I mean, that's the whole purpose of it, is to get a driver's attention. But, I think if you were listening to that, or some of your neighbors were listening to that, all night long, if cars, are running a tire on that rumble strip, I think that would get old pretty fast. So I think that the striping meets the standards, and I think it's sufficient for what's needed.
Okay, is it going to be a little more reflective then, if you're going to keep something flat, or are you just going to use standard lines?
It would be thermoplastic, which typically has like a reflective glass bead in it, so it's it shows up more so than just a regular painted line.
Okay, that's all I have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. So next up I see is Mark Rieger.
Thank you for giving me the opportunity to address everyone. I am Mark Rieger, Dr. Mark Rieger, a pediatric orthopedist that lives at 17 Normandy Parkway. And I want to thank everybody first for their service to the community. Our goals are aligned. We both look and serve for the safety of pedestrians, cyclists of this community. That's what I've been doing for over 30 years, putting your children and your grandchildren back together who have been hurt. I am concerned mainly about putting a bicycle path on Normandy Parkway. You're putting a high-speed roadway next to bicycles, and we'll get to the point later where the bicycle paths end. And on either end of the roadway is high volume traffic too. And I've seen many, many injuries. And personally, 20 years ago, my own partner's wife and child was struck by a motor vehicle in a similar situation by an emergency vehicle or a hospital vehicle. And she was left with traumatic brain injury for the rest of her life. And her child, who was 1 year old, was killed. I'm asking you, as members of the community who serve us to protect the safety and well-being, to reconsider putting a bicycle path. The sidewalk is a separate thing that will address and that change the historic community. I am asking for the safety and well-being. That bicycle path starts on Madison Avenue and ends in Columbia Turnpike. At Columbia Turnpike, both of those are not easy transitions where they're X's. They have left lanes, right lanes turning. And when you stop at a bicycle path and you hit Columbia Turnpike, you end up nowhere. You can't cross Columbia Turnpike and get to an additional bicycle path. You can't turn on Columbia bicycle path and go anywhere. It's a bicycle path to nowhere. And I can tell you from 30 years of experience, putting high speed vehicles next to pedestrians is a mixture that is not a good thing. It is bringing a moth to a flame. And those of you on this committee who run emergency vehicles know that the citizenship is respectful of you. They move to the side, they move into bicycle lanes. And I can tell you that there have been 2 accidents, people driving into my driveway alone over the last 20 years. So putting a bicycle path from one place to another place, which has no beginning and no end as far as bicycle path, is foolhardy. And I would beg you to reconsider, because I'm tired of looking at children and putting them back or seeing them maimed and crippled because we put high vehicles next to pedestrian paths and to bicycle paths. We live in a community that has tremendous recreational facilities where people can bicycle safely through forests and beautiful areas. And I understand, I'm the one who said about Stockton and Prescott, that I know you can't drive it through there and you can't because it's private property, but there are alternate ways of getting from one side, Madison, to Columbia, which is safe. So sidewalk aside, do what you want. I don't think it's a great idea from a historical perspective, but from a safety perspective, I beg you to reconsider. Use common sense. Do not put high velocity vehicles next to pedestrians and bicyclists, especially when you're looking at intersections at both ends, which are dangerous enough to get across if you're a motor vehicle. The many motor vehicle accidents at these intersections, and a motor vehicle against a pedestrian or a cyclist, the vehicle always wins, and I'm stuck in the operating room all night trying to save somebody's limb and keeping them a viable human being. So please, 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 I beg of you, reconsider the bicycle lanes and eliminate that from this plan. And I do thank you for all, but again, we are aligned. I understand you're looking for the safety of and the convenience, and I agree with bicycle paths or walking paths. I enjoy the community. I use many of the bicycle paths and walks. My wife and I enjoy it tremendously. But Normandy Parkway is not a place to put a bicycle path. And that's 30 years of experience and a lot of heartache that you may not see after that bicycle path's put it. Thank you for your time and attention and consideration in this matter.
Thanks, Dr. Rieger.
Thank you for your time.
Next up, I see Joe Sokola and Mary Gorse.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, I have two questions and a comment. So the first question is, somewhere in the past year or so, it seems that, first of all, we're at 23 Normandy Parkway. And somewhere in the past year or so, I think we received something, I believe it was from PSE&G, and they were talking about putting in new piping, gas piping, because the current piping down Normandy Parkway was very old. Is that something that's happening, and how might that disrupt and or add to this project? Or is it not going to happen?
You know, that's a good question, and I will follow up with the gas company. I mean, we give them PSE&G specifically a couple years advance notice when we're doing these jobs. Unfortunately, my experience with them has not been all that great, but I will follow up with them and make sure they're not proposing to tear up the new road. But on a side note, they have made us aware of some work that they're proposing to do, and I believe they're supposed to be starting, you know, within the next, you know, month or so. A road opening permit was issued at Washington and Normandy, but I wasn't aware of any kind of wholesale gas main replacement on Normandy, but I will follow up with them just to make sure that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I don't
appreciate that.
I think it was some kind of a letter we received about less than a year ago regarding that. The second point I want to make is I'm opposed to this project for similar reasons that Dr. Ryder had just mentioned. In fact, we weren't really that much aware of the project until very recently. I'm concerned because this is a very busy street. And whether or not you think it's going to slow the traffic down or not, I know that the cars are running there at 45, 50 miles an hour. And I don't know why you want to encourage both bicycle and pedestrian traffic on this roadway. I think it's dangerous. I don't like the idea of the sidewalk because I think that, you know, it's not, doesn't fit this area, but I really don't like the idea, as I'm concurring completely with Dr. Ryder, of bicycles being encouraged on a street that is extraordinarily busy. It bothers me. And I think we're going to have some issues with accidents. And also it is a road to nowhere, because once you get to the corner of Normandy Parkway and Columbia Turnpike or Columbia Road, however you want to term it, there's no place to go. And that intersection's a mess anyway, since they put those new a few years back, they put the new islands in. So anyway, that's our perspective on it. I am concerned about safety of people and encouraging people to ride on a street that I've lived here for 15 years. This is not a street where people should be riding bikes. That's our opinion. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd like to put my 2 cents in too. I have only seen action by the township committee and all other related township committees that have not been good for our neighborhood. We now have increased traffic because of what you've done with the Honeywell property over many objections of the people in the community. So we have more traffic, and I'm telling you, I don't care what speed limit you put on Normandy Parkway, they're going to be going 50 miles an hour down there. We hear the sound of the real fast motorcycles go, down there. The cars don't make that noise, but they're traveling very fast. So you could put the speed limit at 25 miles an hour and they'll still be going 50 miles an hour. It's a very, very dangerous situation. If you put sidewalks around the trees, the trees are going to have their roots grow up and they're going to disrupt the sidewalks. And just like Elizabeth Nader said, we got our property on Normandy Parkway because it wasn't traveled. It's got these beautiful trees. It wasn't made to be a massive parkway for people to walk. And it is beyond me why you can't negotiate with the private property to have people walk through when there are streets there that would easily take care of that. They could bike and walk. I can see that they don't want the cars to have access to it. It's their private property, but there ought to be some type of negotiation you could do with those people. Normandy Parkway is not a place to put this stuff. There are all kinds of accidents at the corner of Columbia Turnpike and Normandy Parkway. The number varies depending on what outlandish thing they're putting there. One time there was a perfect solution. There weren't any accidents for a long time. And then the next thing I know, they're putting in these islands and people don't know where to turn. Some of them will turn into a small slot that's proper, but a lot of people go a little bit further and turn in the right-hand lane for people coming the other direction. So there are accidents there all the time. If you add pedestrians into that, it's going to be a real mess. And so I really object to this. We're on the other side of Normandy Parkway 23. So the sidewalk will be on the opposite side from us. But I feel very strongly, just like the people on the opposite side of us, and the doctor also is on our side of the street. He feels very strongly. This is not the proper thing to do. And I, every time I turn around, I see a project which is detrimental to us. The Honeywell thing, now the whatever it is.
Red Bulls.
The Red Bulls, the soccer.
Yeah,
thing.
I just want to interrupt you on that. I mean, I don't know, maybe I was wondering if you were aware of the Red Bulls, but that, hopefully that moves forward, and that's a significant reduction in traffic. I mean, the 900,000 square feet of office space, I believe, required 3,600 parking spaces, and the Red Bulls anticipated something in the ballpark of 400 parking spaces. So that alone is a significant reduction in traffic for the area.
Well,
So I just wanted to make that clear because you seem
Yes, we
to
understand
not be
that,
aware of
but
that.
we understand that, but the buildings aren't there. So it's not a reduction to us. Okay. And unfortunately, the Red Bull thing came up when we were not at home. So we didn't get to participate in any meetings relative to the Red Bull thing. So we don't even know what the status of that project is. But they belong in an industrial park. What we need around here is open space. We had a lot of open space. It was very beautiful on the Honeywell property.
Mary, I don't mean to cut you off, but we're getting off track a little bit. We've got, a number of other
Okay.
people that want to, speak.
Sure.
So, I think we've got what we understand where you and Joe are coming from and, appreciate your feedback.
Yes, and finally, that we have lived here a long time. So we have seen a lot happen. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Next up I see is George Nader.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening and thank you for your time. I like to second the opinion of the bicycle lane being a horrible idea. Both intersections, the friendly intersection is busy but somewhat safe. The other side, Normandy Parkway, I've lived on the street for 20 years. I've raised 4 teenagers. 2 of them are driving right now. Every time they leave my house, I warn them about that intersection. I've seen a lot of accidents. I've seen people not knowing how to take the left turn from Columbia onto Normandy, sweeping over the island, behind the island. This is a horrible intersection. And then they start to adjust. I have to say, I'm in the same profession as you. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to be rude, but that's a moronic idea to connect these 2 intersections with a bike lane. Again, the sidewalk is out of contest and is ugly, but no one is going to die. But the bike lane, we're going to be picking up pieces. Also, it's the historic neighborhood. As I said, we raised 4 kids. We never said we wish we have a sidewalk. I'm sorry, we're the taxpayers, and there is a majority of people on this line that do not want this project. Where do we go? Do we have to go to court? Do we have to sue the town? We do not want what you're offering us, and it needs to be taken into consideration. Now, if you win, as you always do, and you have the sidewalk, now I have to get up and shovel the sidewalk, or if somebody falls on the sidewalk, I'm gonna get sued. There is a reason why we live here. I used to live on Washington Avenue, again, another street that got messed with. And the issue is not serving us, it's serving somebody else. And we need to get answers. Who invited this project? We need to stop this project and have the community agree to it. Otherwise, we're gonna get together and we're gonna stop it in court. We're not upset with you, sir. You're a very good engineer. I know that you are, but we're upset with the logic, with the politics, and with the people who make decisions who don't even. Everybody on this phone line has been on the street for 20 years, 25 years. Dr. Cole, 30 years. It doesn't make any sense. We urge you to put the yellow light on this and reconsider. For sure, no bike lane, and spend that money. Concrete was not invented when most of these houses were built. So let's be a little bit sensitive to the historic nature of this street, and maybe do sidewalks that are made out of bluestone so that at least they fit in the neighborhood. This project was not well thought. It was designed and executed by people who do not respect this neighborhood, and we don't want it. Respectfully.
And George, part of the purpose of this meeting is to get feedback from the neighbors. So, we appreciate that and we'll take that into consideration.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Next up I see is Samantha Rothman.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hi, my name's Samantha Rothman. I live at 18 Normandy Parkway with my husband, John, and our 2 kids. But my parents own number 20, and that's where I have lived. We moved here when I was in 6th grade, so I've been here since the 80s. I'm dating myself. And when I was a kid, there was kind of this understanding amongst neighbors that we could all walk across the front of each other's yards, and there was a grass path out actually by the sidewalk instead of where the sidewalk would be. Over the years, the surrounding community has changed greatly, which has caused tremendous amount of traffic on our street. And while we can't change what's already been built, I would like to see a sidewalk or a bluestone dust path, something where people are walking and biking on our street, whether just like the cars are coming and the illegal trucks, I will say, they're already here. And so we need to provide a safe space for pedestrians. I know that on Woodland Avenue many years ago, there was a pedestrian killed and now they have a sidewalk so that that doesn't happen again. I don't want to see that happen on our street. The intersection at Columbia is incredibly dangerous, as everyone has said. However, we still see cyclists on our street. My husband actually is a cyclist and he's a road cyclist specifically. So not, on paths, but on the road. And lots of cyclists now are riding their bikes into Morristown. Morristown downtown has bike lanes, dedicated bike lanes. So cyclists are here in our community. There's also people who do it to get to work, not just recreation. So I think providing them a safer spot. I'm encouraged that the studies that you've done are showing that after the striping came in, the speed was reduced from 45 to 40. So I'm hopeful that these new improvements, you'll do a speed test afterward and we can further reduce the speed. I'm glad you're considering getting air spading done. I hope that you engage a professional arborist to walk the street. Our street and its trees are of the highest value. Over the years, sadly, many of the large trees have been taken down. And I think that anything you can do to protect trees would be much appreciated. I'm very concerned, though, as Mr. Nader said, regarding the liability. A couple of ideas have come to mind. One is that when I've read the code, in the town code, there is a section in the code called exemptions, and certain streets in the township are exempt from shoveling. I know the town isn't hefty on handing out fines, but the liability is there. I do not think my parents who live next door in their 70s need to be shoveling this tremendously long sidewalk or worrying when it's icy and rainy that someone's going to slip and fall and sue them. So if this is to go through, we need guarantees of how to be protected from liability. I was thinking, over at Honeywell, when they put in those condos, instead of putting in a hard sidewalk, the township had them put in a stone dust path. So it's understood by pedestrians that that's not going to be shoveled. So I also think that the coloration of a stone dust path might work contextually better in the neighborhood. I would love to see our neighborhood never need a sidewalk, but the reality is that we are not the neighborhood that I grew up in the 1980s. And I would like my children to be able to walk to Friendly's and get an ice cream cone just like I did. So I would like to see this go through, but I would like to see, other things perhaps considered for the texture and coloration of the sidewalk. I'm glad you're going to see SHPO to get their input. So that's great. But again, too, with the bike lanes, I understand people's worry about someone getting hurt. The reality is, though, that there are cyclists out there and they need a safe spot that's marked out. And I think that this will at least help keep the cyclists safer. My own husband's been hit by cars, so I get it. Like, it drives me crazy. But I do think that there's a lot of people who rely on bicycles for transportation as well, and we need to consider them, not just the cars. So thank you for your time, and thank you for all the work that you are putting into doing this and to listening to the neighbors' concerns. And to my fellow neighbors, I'm looking forward to when we can all see each other in person.
So Samantha, just in reference to the stone dust, unfortunately, that's not a surface that's approved or meets ADA standards. So it's unfortunately, that is not an option. And as far as the section of the snow removal ordinance where there's exemptions, there's 2 roads listed there, Kennedy Road. And my understanding, the reason for that is on Kennedy Road, there's a narrower right of way. I think the right of way may only be 40 feet over there. And the sidewalk is, right up against the curb. So when the road is plowed, the snow is put right up on the sidewalk. With this particular design, we've got a 4-foot offset or shoulder area between the curb and the proposed sidewalk. So there's a pretty decent area to store snow that's plowed off the roadway. The other exemption is on East Hanover Avenue. And I believe there was a problem, over there because you've got 2 lanes of roadway that's being pushed up on the sidewalk. So there's, another lane's worth of snow that's causing, an issue over there. So just wanted to give you a little more background on that, those exemptions that are in there, and follow up on the dust.
Because I will say, for the apron of my driveway, Normandy Parkway is a wide street. And when you throw that heavy snow onto just the apron of my driveway, I'll say 4 feet back, you're still digging hard. So to have that these are long frontages and they're very visible homes. And as someone who has had a family in retail for many years, slip and falls are oftentimes erroneous lawsuits, but they happen pretty frequently and it's a pain to have to litigate them. So I'm very concerned about that type of liability and the added expense. I can't shovel that much of a sidewalk, but I do want something there. Now, as far as the stone dust, I would be interested in what the planning board approved for Honeywell, because for that, townhome project along Columbia, instead of there being a true sidewalk, there is a pathway, and the planning board had them put that there.
And a trail may have some different standards. The issue we're dealing with here is there's NJDOT funding, so there's specific guidelines that have to be followed in that particular case.
Understood. Well, again, the liability to me is the issue that I have the strongest issue with.
All right, thanks. Appreciate the feedback.
Yep.
Next up I see is Sachin. Forgive me if I'm mispronouncing that.
Yep. No, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, this is Sachin Mandal. I'm in 8 Normandy Parkway. And so I've heard all the concerns, and I'm definitely objecting the bike lanes. I heard all of the issues. What I wanted to understand is, what is the reason for implementing the bike lanes that the council thought about? Because so far I've heard the road goes to nowhere, and I agree with them that it doesn't really connect anywhere. So what was the thought process around the bike lanes?
I'm going to go with that's something that was put together with the study that was done with the Recreation Department for the Trails and Pathway Plan. This, there's, routes to help get cyclists, through town to different areas. And this is one that was outlined in that plan.
Okay, thank you. I'm putting forward my objection to the bike. And also for the sidewalks, I would also put forward my objection to the sidewalks on the same grounds as it is a long front yard, and there's a lot of shoveling to be done. And I agree, when the snow plows go through the road, all of that snow comes all the way into our driveway. And I can imagine we already shovel 4 feet in the driveway itself. Now there'll be 4 feet of snow across the entire pathway. So I am objecting the sidewalk as well. So I just want that on record. And so far I haven't heard anyone support the bike lanes, but the pathways I've heard for and against, but from our side, we would like to object the pathway. Just want to be on record.
All right, thanks.
And my wife wanted some things to say as well.
Sure.
Hi, this is Neilma. I object as well to both the bike lane and the sidewalk. I believe that this will create a lot of traffic, and it sort of kind of gets into the privacy factor as well. I mean, my kids play outside. I don't necessarily want a lot of people biking and walking than already is there. And also on the grounds of the snow as well. I also just think people walk their dogs, they don't always pick up, and it'll just create more potential. They litter. I've already seen coffee cups and stuff lying there. So if there's more people, there's chances of more litter. So I just think it's going to not be very beneficial to anyone who lives there. So I also object.
All right, thank you, appreciate the input. And I don't, maybe you guys missed it, but the previous speaker did express support for the bike lanes.
Yes, no, I agree. So thank you very much. We were just putting our point of view forward. Thank you.
Helen Hallberg next, please.
Yeah, hi. And also I wanted to express my thanks for all that you're doing and for having the webinar for us tonight. My husband Douglas and I live at 18 Normandy Boulevard. So we're in the neighborhood that joins onto the Parkway. To get in and out of our neighborhood, we need to be able to turn onto Normandy Parkway. And I thought I would just bring up a discrete safety matter. We have many children and families living in the Normandy Boulevard section. There's a bus stop at the corner of Normandy Boulevard and Normandy Parkway that serves the high school and the children attending Frelinghuysen. There also are many children and families crossing the Parkway to go to the sledding hill that is down Kenilworth in that area there. We were one of the families that suggested the lighted crosswalk feature from a safety perspective. So it is very hard to get vehicles to stop at the crosswalk by Normandy Boulevard in Kenilworth. We've seen success with that in Madison and other communities. So we would really kindly ask you to consider that as part of this project and the budget and include that, because it's really challenging for children and others, really all ages, to get across the Parkway, whether they're walking or with their bikes or with their pets. And I think it would at least help to slow motorists down so that they could get across. And I'm not going to address the Parkway considerations other than we just continue to be concerned about the speed and the safety. I think the neighbors that live on the Parkway have addressed that. I thought Sam's suggestion about the stone dust path was a really good creative suggestion as an alternative to a sidewalk. And that's really my main points. Thanks again.
All right, Helen, as I mentioned, we are doing some research on that, those lighted signs. There's some very specific guidelines. There's the MUTCD, there's NJDOT, there's a lot of things that we need to take into consideration. And I've seen some stuff that's installed in other towns that, is not permitted or not something that's in the regulations. And I would say those municipalities are really, sticking their neck out if someone were to be injured in one of those crosswalks with one of these installations of signs that's, not really permitted under the guidelines. So that we're completing our research on that, and, we'll see what we can do if we can incorporate that. But thanks for your feedback.
Okay, thank you.
And just a reminder that we want to hear from the residents along the roadway first, and then we will, open it up to the other residents in the neighborhood. So next up I see is a Will Neat.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you. I appreciate everyone's comments this evening. I just, I've got a couple of comments and then just one question. Definitely.
Will, can you address, please?
27 Normandy Parkway. So we're at the end near Columbia Turnpike, and I definitely agree with both Dr. Rieger and Mr. Sokola's observations that junction is extremely dangerous, and I'm really not too sure where you go from there as a bike path. So it just kind of is a little perplexing to me. Similarly with the sidewalk, I do appreciate that sort of upgrading neighborhoods with these types of features is often a good idea. I just am concerned about what happens when you get to Columbia Turnpike or to the Madison Avenue side. They're just fairly dangerous intersections, and I just don't know how many people really go up and down the road to warrant the expense. So my real question is kind of how the town evaluates where you're going to spend this type of money in a township. I mean, we all appreciate the town investing in our neighborhoods and everything, but I do see the occasional person walk up and down Normandy Parkway, but it doesn't seem to be a huge volume of people. I'm sure I haven't really noticed the bikers, but I'm sure there's one or two that do go up and down it. But I'm just wondering if it's the best use of resources in Morris Township. Obviously I kind of I think I'm a little ambivalent to how it all pans out, other than the fact that we're kind of obviously impacting some of my neighbors who disagree with what's being done. But how many people are there better roads to do this on? That would be my question. And how do you evaluate that this is a road that's really targeted for that, when I don't really observe that many pedestrians or bikers?
As I mentioned previously, this is something that's been called out since 2008 in the Trails and Pathways Plan. It is also something that's been mentioned in previous master plan documents. As the mayor mentioned, there was a survey that was done with residents, and some of the areas they talked about is providing links to the traction line. And there is sidewalk that goes all the way down Woodruff Road, on the opposite side. And if this provides a link to that neighborhood, to the traction line, to Madison Avenue. And the road needs to be paved. We had the opportunity to take advantage of some state aid funds, and since those documents had talked about the link and the need for a link on the sidewalk, we incorporate into the project. But we want to get feedback from neighbors as well, and that's why we're having this meeting.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you. Yeah, I guess my final sort of comment really speaks to what Dr. Rieger had kind of spoken about. Is we hear accidents at Columbia and Normandy almost every week. Every weekend I think there's an accident there, it seems. And I think if we're going to move forward with this plan, there needs to be really serious consideration about how bikers and pedestrians are going to be protected when there's numerous car accidents there. So that would be my final comment.
Okay. I mean, we did look at the accident history from the police department, and there's accidents over there, but they're not every week. There may have been over a 2-year period, with the accident reports, 7 or 8 accidents. There's not one every weekend.
No. Wow, I'm surprised by that data. I moved in, I've been here barely a year, and I think I've observed at least 4 or 5 since in the last year, so myself, and that's just when I'm around. So interesting data.
Okay, thank you. Next up I see is Richard Tangle. Mr. Tangle, you there? I'm assuming you're having some kind of audio issue. We'll come back to you. I'm going to go to Sue Socelli.
I don't want to be butting in line. I want to make sure that the Normandy Parkway people have gotten their say before I speak. I'm from the Featherly Road, Green Knolls Road neighborhood.
Okay, Sue, if we can come back to you then, I'm just going to go down the list a little bit then, but we'll keep your hand up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. All right, next up, Mark Malaya.
Hi, this is Chloe Malay, and I really just, oh, sorry, we're at 5 Normandy Parkway, so we're not on the side that's affected by the sidewalk. My question is really, is there any other traffic calming stuff that you can do? I mean, I know you said you've already striped the sides, but are there alternatives that you can do to the bike lanes, since it seems like a lot of folks have objections to the bike lanes, like that would slow the traffic down? Because I would really like to get the speed limit reduced. I have small children that wait for the bus at the end of the driveway, and I often worry about like somebody swiping them. We're on the corner of Normandy Parkway and Normandy Boulevard, and people just go so fast, it's hard to get out of my driveway. I'm sure everybody feels the same. So I just wondered if you have ideas for if there are alternatives to the bike lane.
No, I think that, what we're doing is going to help reduce the speeds of the roadway. I did not have any other thoughts on other traffic calming.
And then the other thing is, I would not want a sidewalk on my side of the street either, because it's not on our side of the street. So I feel sort of ambivalent about it. It's really like I defer to the neighbors who live on the side where they're being directly affected. But I have a Belgian block apron that I'd be really bummed if you guys were going to rip up and redo.
So we're empathetic.
So we're very empathetic to that. And I wonder if this is going to go forward, if there is something that can keep more in line with the beauty of this historic neighborhood, such as Bluestone, which would be ADA compliant, I think.
Ridiculously expensive.
It'd probably be ridiculously expensive, but I wonder if that's some kind of an option if you go forward with sidewalks.
The alternative material.
I would agree with you. That would be very expensive. We can talk about some options, amongst the township committee. Some tinting of the concrete is something that comes to mind. I don't want to, make any promises, but that could be something that was considered.
And is this like a foregone conclusion that you guys are absolutely doing this and you're just sort of hearing people's feelings about this? Or is this something that are you going to take this into consideration and it's possible that you won't go forward with this?
The project's going to move forward. What is all part of the project, is, subject to some discussion, and, it's up to the township committee if something's going to be removed or added to the project. But, the plan is to advance the project, especially we've got $300,000 in state aid that we need to take advantage of. And there's, deadlines that, have to be followed in order to take advantage of that funding.
And then lastly, are you going to pave the road though, no matter what? Because it really, when I actually grew up in this neighborhood, like Samantha, and it was a really, really beautiful street when I was a kid, with huge trees overhanging, the parkway, and it just, the street doesn't look so great. So I'm hoping that regardless, you're going to pave the road and make it look pretty again.
The road is definitely going to be paved.
Okay, good. That's all that I have then. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next up, Sean Riley.
Hi, Jim. Thanks for taking the time. I apologize. I got disconnected right as you called me. So that's I don't know if there's irony there or not, but can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So Shannon, my wife, and I have lived at Normandy Parkway, 26 Normandy Parkway since March 2001. So we've seen a lot. Got the gray hair to prove it. And I think up front, just one quick question I want to ask that came to mind recently is the state funding tied to bike lanes and the sidewalk?
I don't think it is. I think it's strictly tied to the milling and paving. But there's it triggers other requirements for ADA upgrades, American Disabilities Act. Which
is a sidewalk, is that right?
Well, where there is existing sidewalk, the ADA accessibility has to meet certain standards. It's got to be detectable warning surfaces. It can't be over a certain slope. There's other things where because there's existing sidewalks on the roadway, so that triggers certain requirements. So there are a certain amount of improvements, but not the sidewalks along the entire roadway. When we applied for those funds, it was strictly for the milling and paving. But it does trigger where there's existing sidewalk and ramps that they have to meet all ADA standards.
For existing.
Correct.
Okay. So to be clear, we can pave the road with the funding, even though there's no bike lanes or sidewalk.
That's my understanding. I mean, we still have to send the plans.
We'll get clarification on that then?
Well, when we send the package to them, if, once it's finalized, they would review it. If they had some sort of issue, they would let us know.
Well, they already gave us the funding based on the project. If you take the sidewalks and the bike lane out, do we have the funding?
I believe so. They could have a different opinion on that.
But they might. Okay. So
when we submitted to them, it showed the sidewalk and the bike lane striping. Is that correct, Bernie? I just want to make sure I'm accurate with that.
Yeah. I mean, what happens is the state aid applications had different categories. This was submitted to local aid as a resurfacing. So that's the category that it's in. But when we submit those applications, they want DOT wants to know that you've designed the project in accordance with DOT requirements. And part of that, they want you to look at other transportation facilities, sidewalks and bike lanes. And that's also part of the.
Okay, so it is tied then.
Well,
the funding is tied to sidewalk and
it's
bike lanes.
Part of the scope of the project, and certainly that adds value. DOT likes that when they see those projects, they like them and they tend to award monies to them. But
that's just clear yes or no. Is it tied to the funding or not? That's all. It's just simple yes or no.
It's not a yes or no question because what happens is there are items that DOT, if they want to, can exclude. So this project is close to 600,000. Local aid's share will be 291,000, and we have roughly that in paving alone. So what can happen is if we need to eliminate something, we can do that without jeopardizing our funding necessarily. So it's not that straightforward, but strictly speaking, the application was submitted as a resurfacing project.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And then the requirements that we have to follow, such as looking at complete.
Yeah, for existing crosswalks and what have you. I get it. Not for new.
It does require towns to look at installing new sidewalks and bikeways.
Right. So, okay, then it's tied to the funding. I don't know why this is so difficult. Okay. Next question is, if I understand correctly, we have the sidewalk on the south side of the road because we don't want to do a retaining wall on the other side of Columbia Turnpike. But because we're putting it on the south side of the road, we're creating additional crosswalks on one of the busiest streets in the township.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
If the sidewalk was on the north side of the street, there would not be a crosswalk to nowhere from Featherly or from the school. Is that correct?
It is currently on the north side. We did not put it on the south side because of that retaining wall issue.
If it was on the other side of the street, you would not have to have crosswalks at Featherly and the school. Is that correct?
No. Legally, there are crosswalks at every intersection. They exist by law.
Well, there's not now. There's not now.
There are crosswalks. They're just not marked.
There are not crosswalks right now on Normandy Parkway at Featherly or the school.
There's a difference between what's called a crosswalk and a marked crosswalk. You're correct. There currently aren't marked crosswalks, but crosswalks.
There are no crosswalks, marked or unmarked.
No.
Just as Bernie, as a point of clarification.
Jim, seriously, we walk the street, Jim.
Sean,
There's no crosswalk.
Can I just clarify this?
Sure. Absolutely.
So what Sean is saying is if the sidewalk's on the other side of the road, we would not need crosswalks. And I would tend to agree with him at Featherly and the school. If the sidewalk was on the other side of the road, we would not put crosswalks in.
That brings me to how dangerous that road is, and you're inviting multiple crossings on
Sean, I'm asking for Bernie to answer this
Right.
question. Can you let him finish?
Oh, okay, sure.
So at Featherly, even though it's not marked, there is what's called a legal crosswalk. In other words, pedestrians have the right by law to cross there. Excuse me. The purpose of marking it is if under engineering study, we've determined that we want to make sure whoever's crossing there legally does it in a marked area because it provides additional safety.
Okay, why has it not been marked for 20 years? Maybe longer, but I've been here for 20 and a half years and it hasn't been marked, either one.
Well, it's been on the master plan for at least that many years and it's just taken a while to get there. It just hasn't been done.
Real? Okay, I'd love to see that 20-year-old master plan that has crosswalks that haven't been done. All right. So my wife has some things to say. You wanted to say something, right? I personally am objecting to the everything but the repaving. I concur with everybody's fears for the people that are bike riding on one of the most busiest streets. And I also have an issue with taking the town's money and building a sidewalk to nowhere. Maybe this is some greater plan to get people to walk to a museum, but there's various ways to get to the museum without walking down Normandy Parkway. And so, did you want to add anything, Shannon?
No, I'm opposed to the sidewalk and the bike lane for the same reason. I feel like they're both leading to two very busy and dangerous intersections. I see many accidents just recently with the new merge, even though they increase the size of the yield signs, there's still accidents happening. And I just think it makes, in my opinion, zero sense to have this sidewalks and bike lanes on this artery leading to two very dangerous intersections. More importantly, I think the money should be spent on the bridge that looks like it's about to collapse right past Fairlands.
Which trucks that are illegally going over every day that they're trying to get around traffic on 287. I concur with everybody's thoughts about liability and the additional burden on the homeowners that get a sidewalk that they have to clear. So I'm against all of it, and I'd like to know, where do we go from here? Because what I just heard you say was this project's going to go forward. There might be some things that get changed or removed, but the project's going forward. So where do we go from here? I mean, we all heard everybody on the street. There might be more neighbors to voice their opinion, but I think it's predominantly object than agree so far. Would anybody disagree with that?
I'm going to have discussions with the township committee, after this meeting, and then we'll follow up with the residents.
Okay.
Appreciate your input.
Yeah, thanks for your time.
All right, I think we've got all the residents covered, just looking at the names there. So Sue Sarcelli, you want to ahead,
Yes,
you're
thank
up.
you very much. Okay, you got me. You can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, so I have it already written down, so I'm not going to be wavering. So hang in there. And it's less than 5 minutes.
Can I have your address too, Sue, please?
Oh, I'm sorry. 9 Green Knolls Road. I'm in the neighborhood where our exit and entrance is Featherly Road. Okay.
Yep.
There has been a lot of reasons listed tonight as to why this proposal should not happen. Sometimes the best idea for public safety is not really the best. Circumstances such as those that exist at the Columbia Road Normandy Parkway intersection would put riders at a greater risk of injury. Please consider the following. The proposed school side bike lane stops abruptly at Featherly Road. At this point, there is a yellow diamond sign that warns cars of hidden driveways. It is also at this point that the shoulder designation ends because the road narrows. There is barely enough room for 2 vehicles, much less adding a bicycle. That was my bird, I'm sorry. Much less adding, Jasper, hush. Much less adding a bicycle that needs to hug the curb just so much. This bike path that you're talking about, and everybody's saying it's a bike path to nowhere. If you think about it, is there a bike path anywhere on 124 at Friendly's? And all there are sidewalks. And then all of a sudden you're going to have this bike lane. And then when you get over to the other side at the Morris Museum, is there a bike lane? No, there's only a sidewalk. So these bikers are going to get over onto the Morris Museum side, and they're just going to start using the sidewalk. So now you got bikers hanging out on the sidewalk, both on Woodruff and on 124. That's something I don't know if you've considered. Also, any idea of putting a bike box, which is what you would have to do, it was mentioned before, that should not be considered at Columbia. It will stop vehicles from making a right on red. As it is during rush hour, cars are already backing up past the Featherly Road entrance. And go and observe right now how many vehicles cut the corner when they make a left onto Normandy. So much so that at the end, that the thick white stop line that's there now on the end, which is set back pretty far from the intersection as it is worn off. Even today, when I left my dad, I got to that intersection, and as I was approaching that intersection, a tan caravan decided to make a left and cut off the people that are already starting to come through the intersection from Columbia. And they actually drove down the wrong side of the road just as I'm trying to approach that light. I mean, yes, there was 2 feet in between us, but it could have been less. I also would suggest that there's accidents, and there are a lot of accidents that occur there. And I know people have been saying they've been there for 20 years and 25 years, and there is empiric information. We have been at that same place living on Green Knolls Road for 66 years. Our backyard is 2 properties up from that intersection. We used to call it Killer Corner because in way back, there were a lot of really bad accidents. You cannot place bikers front and center to these occurrences. And I also believe that from past meetings, I've always said to you that I try to offer a viable solution. And that's what I like to try to say now. I'm going to ask 2 questions. You don't have to answer them, just follow along. Has there ever been a pedestrian or biker complaint regarding the safety of Normandy Parkway? Has there ever been a pedestrian or bicycle injury or accident involving a car on Normandy Parkway? So my suggestion is this: if you're not going to listen to us and you still want to put in bike lanes, then take the shoulders that were just put in recently, paint them your green color, and make that your bike lanes. They're using it anyway. The bikers right now use the shoulders as their bike lane, so fine, paint it green. Do not add that 1.5 foot buffer. You keep the lanes as they are. I feel that as long as I can remember also, there is a long-standing, well-worn footpaths on either side of the road that pedestrians have been using for as long as I can remember. We use them all the time. back in the 1960s. So it's been there all the time. And nobody seems to have a problem. It's working out just fine. So I do not feel that there needs to be any further marring of the landscape of Normandy Parkway by felling 6 or so trees. The so bothers me, and adding impervious coverage in the way of sidewalks. It's a historical road. It needs to remain a historical road. It needs to remain looking like it's there in the countryside. Thank you very much for your time. And the last thing is, I feel that if we have $300,000, go right ahead. Resurface Normandy Parkway because it needs it, because it hasn't been done in eons. But this bike lane idea, seeing that there's no bike lane on either end of it, on either side of it, and those bikers are going to start using sidewalks on 124 and Woodruff, it just makes very little sense to me. So thank you very much for your time.
All right, thanks, Sue. Appreciate it. Yeah. Next up is Caitlin Mugadordini. I'm maybe butchering that, but apologize.
Hi, it's Caitlin Mondradini. That's okay. I am a relatively new resident to Normandy Parkway. I live at 7 Normandy Parkway with my husband, Mike, and my young son. And I apologize. I was not able to join the beginning of this meeting and hear some of my neighbors' concerns about the project. I joined this call originally in support of adding a sidewalk, which I viewed as a welcome safety feature to what is otherwise a extremely dangerous and busy road, especially for families with small children. It is difficult for me to have a strong opinion in favor or in object to the project, given that it's not my side of the street that's being severely impacted by the plans of a sidewalk. And I definitely sympathize with any additional burden that it would cause my neighbors, especially as it relates to liability and snow removal. And it was probably already addressed earlier in the call, but if there was a way to somehow limit the liability for our neighbors, if this project were to continue and the sidewalk were to be added, I'd be very much in favor of, helping our neighbors with snow removal and limiting their liability with the project. But I do think I share the same concern that everyone has on this call, which is the safety concern. And I welcome any ideas regarding beautification or improvement projects that would bring safety to the neighborhood in terms of a reduced speed limit and maybe even reduced traffic over time. My husband, son, and I spend a lot of our weekends walking along Normandy Parkway on everyone's grass and the nearby neighborhoods. As new residents to Morris Town, we enjoy exploring and we enjoy admiring the beauty of the many historic houses that line this street. And if there was a safer way to do that, we'd welcome it. But I recognize that it's not that simple. And I recognize that there are many pros and cons to a project of this scale. But I'm in support of any ideas that could bring safety and a reduced speed limit to our street.
All right, thanks, Caitlin. Appreciate it. Rich Tangle. Rich, I'm showing that you're unmuted, but we don't hear you. Rich, I'll come back to you again. Nancy Regan.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, yes, hi. My name is Nancy Regan. I don't live on Normandy Parkway. I live in the parallel street behind it on number 7 Humphrey Road. And I'm just interested in sidewalks purely from a safety perspective. I think it would be nice if the children could walk to school along the road. I'm also someone that walks a lot. And so I do walk on people's grass and it can be rather uneven. So I'm only looking at it from that perspective, that it would be nice to have sidewalks to be able to walk around. And then I also want to second what Ms. Halberg said about it's very hard to cross. If we could put in a blinking sign or something, it would slow people down. They go flying down Normandy Parkway. They're almost hitting people. They do not stop for pedestrians in that crossway. And also the gentleman who said that there have been no painted crosswalks. There needs to be painted crosswalks. There's hundreds of children that attend that school. It's ridiculous to not have painted crosswalks by the school. And my final point is that bridge. I know it's probably a different pool of money from the federal government, but the bridge really is a nightmare. And walking over it, I'm concerned. Thank you.
Thanks, Nancy. And just so everyone's aware, that bridge is NJ DOT, New Jersey Transit. It's outside of our jurisdiction.
Okay, got it. Yeah, I figured it was a different pool of money. All right, thank you.
Jim, does that include the sidewalk there as well? It's under their jurisdiction?
Yeah, the entire bridge, including sidewalks.
Yeah, the sidewalk is like attached to the bridge. It's I think it's one unit.
Next up, Art Cashin.
Yes, hi, Art Cashin, 5 Lidgerwood, part of the Normandy Boulevard area. So I had a couple of questions. Somebody mentioned before that there's a legal crosswalk to Featherly, as far as because there's an intersection there is legally a crosswalk there. What's the difference between that and Washington Avenue there? I know you guys are trying to avoid people crossing there, but wouldn't there be a legal crosswalk at Washington Avenue and Normandy there?
That's correct. Yeah. But
So
the person crossing there, though, has to make sure the vehicle stop. But that's the issue. You run the risk because of the limited sight distance there.
Right, but then why do you overdevelop Kenilworth versus the fact that if there's a legal crosswalk there and people are legally allowed to cross there, we're trying to push everybody to Kenilworth?
We're not going to stripe something that doesn't have adequate sight distance. We're not going to put people in a location that's doesn't meet standards.
Then all the others, talking about sidewalks. So the Morris School District doesn't require sidewalks for kids to get to bus stops, right? So I know my son has to walk through roads that don't have crosswalks on them to get to his bus stop. So I'm just trying.
One of the issues here you have to be aware of is that you have a roadway, a public roadway, that has existing sidewalk on both ends. And in the middle of the road is a school. Municipalities are hard pressed not to complete sidewalk improvements on public roadways where there's a school. The DOT design requirements want municipalities to install sidewalks in these locations.
But you're doing it on the side of the street that's going to require a crosswalk there, instead of doing it on the side of the street that's not going to require a crosswalk going into the school.
Right. Whichever side to cross the sidewalks on, doesn't matter. You still have to get students across the road, even if they're
we're only doing one sidewalk here.
Even if they're walking on the shoulder of one side of the road that doesn't have sidewalk, you would want to mark it so that the kids know where to cross at the intersection with the school.
But I mean, we're forcing everybody to now walk onto that side of the street and have to use that intersection instead of discouraging them because we're not putting a crosswalk on the south side of the street.
No, that's a valid point. And the solution to that is to put sidewalk on both sides.
And then the maintenance of this. So are we going to be pushing the snow over to the side that doesn't have the sidewalk? I mean, if you try to plow the street, evenly from both sides, you have this one side that has the risk of, has the 4-foot sidewalk that they have to clear and maintain versus another side that doesn't have to do it. Are we going to try to push all the snow to the south side when we plow Normandy?
No, that's not going to happen, but there's a 4-foot shoulder area between the curb and a grass area between the curb and the sidewalk for.
And what's the average width of Normandy? I mean, how much snow has to fall in order to fill that up? In order to get plowed there, especially now if we're going to plow to make a bike path there too, we're going to plow deeper than we've ever plowed before, right? So that's going to pile up even higher.
No, they plow to the curb. There's no difference in the plowing because there's a bike lane striped.
And then you said some of this came from the recreation department.
The recreation department was involved with the path and trails plan. Pathway and trails.
These are the guys who made us tear out all those trees on the Honeywell property to put in an ineffective soccer field. Had input into this plan before the neighbors did.
No, I don't even know what your connection is with recreation and Honeywell. You're talking about the field that was something that was proposed when that initially was looked at.
Yeah, so we sacrificed all those old growth trees like we were talking about here as far as how many trees have to be removed on this process. The town has, and even so, on that recreation property, they haven't even built up they haven't put in the trees that they promised to replace there yet. How can we trust you guys as far as maintaining these trees and air spading and doing the right thing arbor-wise when you guys don't even honor the commitments you have, already made?
Hovnanian has agreed to install those trees, and I believe that their plan is to plant them in the spring. We worked it out so the township taxpayers wouldn't have to pay for those, and we've got Hovnanian to do it. But I mean, you're getting off track here. Do you have any other questions related to this project?
Yeah. So I'm trying to understand the process. So it sounds like you guys, put together this plan with all the sexy things that the Department of Transportation wanted first, as far as bike paths and sidewalks in order to get the funding. And now we're having these conversations instead of finding out what the town wanted and what the residents in the area wanted to do this. So I'm trying to understand the process here. Will the township committee have an option to know what could be done with those funds that don't involve these other things that the town is complaining about? What can be done for the $300,000 for paving and trying to fix up any any curbs and crosswalks there without having to do the bike path, without having to do a full sidewalk?
Those will be discussions that we'll have after receiving all the input from all the neighbors.
No, but I'm saying it looks like we're doing it backwards, right? You put all that stuff in there in order to get the DOT funding, right?
Not exactly. The funding request is an application. It's not this detailed. DOT has not seen the detailed engineer's plans, but DOT knows that municipalities follow the DOT design guidelines and the Complete Streets policy, which requires municipalities to look and see if there's a need to improve pedestrian safety and bicycles. And what's also driving us is that we have a master plan that identified this roadway as part of an overall route for these pedestrian and bicycle improvements. So again, it's just a complete process to get a set of plans together that meets these requirements. And then by following DOT's requirements, these are the plans that we come up with, and we present them to the residents.
And then you said Prescott Road is a private road?
That's correct.
But we are now going to have recreational facilities on it and possibly, convert that carriage house into something useful for the town. So what's going to prevent them from saying it's still a private road as far as the people who want to use those facilities?
Well, we have rights to use that for the recreation and the open space. Again, I think we're getting off track on the project here.
No, it's the trust part that I'm trying to do, because you guys are going to promise all these guys things. and that are going to get done. And I'm just pointing out that, when we've been affected by it in the past over here, as far as, not receiving, the plantings for the environment, getting screwed on that stuff with the Honeywell. I'm just saying that there's a history here of, things being said and not being delivered. And I want to make sure that the residents who are affected by this are hearing the same. Thank you for your time.
And maybe you didn't hear me before, but those trees are supposed to be planted by Hovnanian this spring. Dick Edwards next, please.
Hello.
We can hear you.
Okay, my name's Dick Edwards. I live on Normandy Boulevard East, I guess about a half a block east of Doug and Helen. I strongly object to this project basically on 3 points. One deals with the traffic flow on Normandy Parkway. If I leave my house on Normandy Boulevard East and drive toward the Parkway and I want to go to Morristown or Madison, I have to make a left turn to go over the bridge, okay? If I'm there anywhere between 3 o'clock and 7 o'clock in the evening, I'll sit and watch 20 to 25 cars come from Madison Avenue, followed by another 15, 20, 25 cars from Columbia Turnpike. And when there's a gap, I hit the gas as hard as I can, go screeching around the corner up over the bridge, okay? All I need is to have a bicyclist right in the way as I'm trying to do that. It's a very dangerous intersection as it is right now. There's been times when I've tried to get in between traffic to go where I've almost gotten hit by a FedEx truck. So, that will, having bicyclists intermixed with traffic on that road, I think is a recipe for disaster. Second point I'd like to make is I walk the traction line about 3 or 4 times a week to get some exercise. There is a pathway that starts at the eastern terminus of Normandy Boulevard West, goes along a brick wall and comes out. It's a mud pathway, comes out to the traction line, okay? It's a way of avoiding the intersection at Friendly's or avoiding the steps when there's ice on the steps. I'm sure the bicyclists on the traction line will figure out that pathway and they will go cut through there, emptying out to Normandy Boulevard West or Lidgerwood and working themselves through our neighborhood. Our neighborhood is a double cul-de-sac. On any given spring, summer, or autumn afternoon, there's at least a dozen to 2 dozen pre-teenage kids playing out on the street. How would you like it if your 8 and 10-year-old little girl is confronted by strange bicycle riders from outside the neighborhood? I don't think anyone would care to have that happen. The third point I'd like to make is that the Parkway is a historic feature of the neighborhood. It was developed by John Caulfield in 1890. It's existed for 130 years. It's one of the reasons we moved here because we don't live on the Parkway itself, but we drive past the Parkway every day to get to our house. It's lasted for this amount of time. I don't know why it has to be changed for a few entitled and privileged bicycle riders, okay? I'm 77 years old, and one thing I've learned through the years is when a politician says, I've got something for you, just be careful. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Dick. Next up is Jessica.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me? Hi. I'm Jessica Ryder. I live actually across the street from Dick. I'm at 16 Normandy Boulevard East. And I just wanted to say actually the opposite, which is that I am in favor of this project. I have young kids. I myself am a cyclist. And we love to walk the neighborhood. I hate that my neighborhood doesn't have sidewalks, actually. I moved from Georgian Road to Normandy Boulevard. And when we moved here, one of the reasons I didn't want to move here was because we don't have any sidewalks, which I find inconvenient with my kids. When we want to go for a walk, you know, they're wandering into the street. They're kids. They don't pay a lot of attention. They walk in the middle of the road, even when they're walking with me. My dog walks in the middle of the road. I got to pull his leash short every time a car goes by. I would love to have sidewalks in my neighborhood. We love to walk to Featherly, but we're stuck walking on that stupid grass pathway, which right now, because it snowed and is icy, is treacherous and a nightmare. I walked it yesterday and I slipped and fell. If people had sidewalks there, it would be much safer for me and my children and my dog, and I would love it. And I am a cyclist. I cycle all the roads around Morris County, Somerset County, everywhere. And a bike lane, I mean, I don't know that we necessarily need it, but it would be great. I would feel safer as a cyclist having a bike lane. But I cycle on roads all over Morris Township that don't have bike lanes. So it's just not, doesn't seem to be something that has been focused on, unfortunately. But I think that it's a great thing. When I lived on Georgian Road, I had to take care of the sidewalk in front of me. Honestly, like, it's not that big a deal. It adds like 5 minutes to your snow blowing or like $5 to your landscaping bill. It's not really like a huge inconvenience in my opinion. But I think that for families with young kids who want walkability, and that's the reason they moved to Morristown, we love to walk into town, all of it. I think it's a great project.
All right,
I would just
thanks.
like to see this. I'd just like to see the speed lowered on Normandy Parkway because it is hard for us to cross.
Thanks, Jessica. Appreciate your input.
Yep.
David Leitner. I think I need glasses. Sorry. Leitner. Sorry.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I live on Normandy Boulevard West, and I basically concur that, you know, to have a bike lane, to encourage people to ride a bike between Madison Avenue and Columbia Turnpike seems like it would be, you know, with the high-speed traffic, I think that will be dangerous. The bike lane will encourage more people to ride their bikes there. I'm opposed to that. And with regards to the sidewalk, I would basically defer to the wishes of the people who live on that street, basically, primarily. The other concern is that, as Dick Edwards noted, people would be cutting through from Normandy Parkway to Normandy Boulevard West. We already have a narrow street with no sidewalks and minimal street lighting. And if you were to increase traffic in here, I do think that would not be a safe situation. Two cars can just barely pass each other now through a neighborhood. So I'm going to be going on the record as opposing the bike lanes on Normandy Parkway.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate your input. David Cupo.
Yeah, Jim, thanks. One more thing. When we moved here 24 years ago, almost 25 years ago, we didn't have sidewalks. And I remember you coming and telling me you were going to put sidewalks in so people could walk to Friendlies. And I'm like, okay, that's fine. What I've experienced is people said things about additional trash. I don't think the trash has changed. People are going to throw junk out of their car on your sidewalk. It is what it is. So that really hasn't changed. Sidewalk, no sidewalk, or bike path. The one thing I did notice, and I just talked to the township about it, is they do tend to plow right up to where the ADA path is. And it's I'm 66 now, and it's no fun chiseling out all that rocky ice and snow in the wintertime to get in. But I do it every year because there is a lot of people that walk, and I want to make sure that, you know, I'm not so much worried about getting sued. I'm hoping people be considerate, but I want to make sure people can get through and do what they need to do. The one thing I'm going to implore is the flashing lighted speed limit signs would be extremely helpful. And again, the lighted crosswalk between Normandy Boulevard and Kenilworth is really imperative, because people don't stop at that cross sign. In fact, they take it down every winter time to plow. It's not there now. Last year, somebody ran over it and didn't get repaired for about 6-7 months. So that's my only concern. I already have a sidewalk. I kind of have no, I don't have a dog in the fight, but I do want to implore you to do something with the speed limit, the flashing speed limit signs. They do help, and the flashing crossing line. Right, and that's pretty much all I have.
Okay.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
appreciate it. As we mentioned, we're going to be, researching that issue. I'm not going to put up a sign that's not, legal. I just don't want to expose the township to liability.
I understand. Thank you.
Next up, I see there's no name. It just says Zoom user.
Can you hear me?
We can hear
Hello?
you now.
Oh, yeah, my name's Lou Rothman. I live at 20 Normandy Parkway. And, that's where the sidewalk is proposed to go in. And I really have no massive objections to anything that makes life nicer for people in the neighborhood. However, my son, who's a genius with math, figured out that between myself and my daughter, if a 6-inch snowfall came down, that would create 8,000 pounds of snow on the 4-foot sidewalk in front of our 2 houses. Now, you said that your plows would come down the street and put the snow on the 4 feet that's between the sidewalk and the curb. If you do that, where do I put my 16,000 pounds of snow? It means that, do you follow what I'm saying? You're going to pile up the snow on the 4-foot part. Where do we pile up our snow? On top of that, while I have no objection, and in fact, I think it's nice that people could have a sidewalk, I don't want the responsibility of shoveling this thing or the liability if somebody trips and falls on it. Now, a woman just 1 or 2 speakers ago mentioned that she had tripped and fallen in front of somebody else's property. And of course, I assume she didn't sue them, but people are litigious. And I think unless there's an exclusion for maintaining these sidewalks and the liability of somebody falling on the sidewalk, then I would be opposed to it. Other than that, I have no problem.
All right, thanks, Lou. I'll get back to you and let you know where to put your 60,000 pounds of snow.
Thank you.
Rich Tangle again.
Yes, can you hear me now?
Yep, we got you.
Oh, very good. Thanks. Yeah, I don't know what was wrong last time. Okay, I live on 16 Featherly Road, so I'm in the Normandy neighborhood, and I've been here 40 years, and I've certainly seen Normandy Parkway remain really the speedway that it is. I don't see that changing, particularly with the whole medical complex area growing from the hospital to all the other offices that they're occupying, and just Medical Row in general. People are rushing to appointments and rushing to their jobs, and Normandy is the boulevard to get there in the morning and afternoon, and everything else that happens in the area here. So over the many years, I've just seen traffic increase, and the drivers are aggressive on that road. It's so I feel certainly bike lanes are just going to create, and I'm a professional engineer, still active, and I've been involved in many, unfortunately, loss of life and serious injury lawsuits regarding infrastructure projects, major and minor. And I've heard attractive nuisance many times in my career. And I just feel these bike lanes are creating a public safety hazard. And it can be argued that the sidewalks are too, particularly since a lot will go to nowhere. And that intersection at Columbia and Normandy is very dangerous. I feel the county it really did a poor job if they were responsible for that island in there, and the turning maneuvers and striping and arrows, the way they did it, it's just a mess there. And I see people almost every week as I get out of Featherly, and they pass that island heading south and west to come on Normandy south, and they go beyond the island and make the left. And, you know, people aren't used to that, maybe going on an appointment somewhere, and they're not used to the area. And if there aren't accidents every week, there's certainly a close calls every day at that intersection there. So I'm really concerned that there's a problem. And I'll just speak regarding Featherly there, just a close interest. I try and get out of the intersection sometimes going right or left, and it backs up that traffic at the light, and anything to disrupt that, whether it's a bike crossing or a pedestrian crossing there, that's just going to create quite a traffic mess there. And people try and get by you, and bike lane or not striping, they're still going to try and squeeze by, sneak by. And even when I slow down when I'm coming north on Featherly from Friendly, say, to make a right on the Featherly, if I slow down to make my right, people are like honking at me. You know, they think that they want to get past the green light on Columbia, and I'm like impeding their flow. And, you know, that happens often. So I'm just very concerned about this. I don't think it's adding to public safety. It may help a few people that want to walk and don't want to walk on the grass and so forth. But I just feel it's going to stay a high-speed road no matter what the township does, even if you posted a cop there every day. It's just people need to get to where they need to be, and that's the best way to do it there. And I just want to mention one thing about obstructions. You know, there's landscape trucks that park on Normandy. There's the garbage cans that are there. There's leaf piles during the fall. I mean, that's going to, you know, what are you going to do about that? That's going to just, there's plenty of room now to get around all those obstructions, and you're going to eliminate that if you make the corridor narrower for vehicles. And I just see many problems being imposed. And I agree with the doctors too. And I've experienced it, severe injury and loss of life due to certain things and infrastructure things that weren't the best thought out plans. And I hate to see that happen here. So.
Thanks, Rich. Appreciate your input.
Thank you.
Tracy Norton, next up, please.
Yes. Hi, this is Jeff Norton, Tracy's husband. We live at 14 Featherly. So we are right off of Normandy Parkway. I guess my overall concern, while I admire what looks like a thorough plan, and I appreciate the township using, you know, federal money or other grants to help improve the town. My question is, besides Normandy Parkway needing to be repaved, I just don't know that we need bike lanes. We already have, I guess they're called fog lanes, but we essentially already have those lanes on the shoulders on both sides. And, you know, like many other residents on this call, I frequently walk down to the traction line by the train tracks, and I'll either walk on, you know, those quote bike lanes or fog lanes facing traffic, or just up on the grass. And in all honesty, I just don't think there's enough usage or demand for a separate bike trail and sidewalks. I walk it fairly recently, and yes, there are people out walking or biking, but I think, like some others have commented, it seems like we're putting a bike path in almost as if it's a standalone bike path. So I guess overall I would object to things beyond just the repaving, which I think is needed. I echo the concerns about getting out of Featherly Road. That's always a challenge. And well, a crosswalk there for safety's sake would be good. I think adding bike lanes or I guess the bike lane would kind of disappear at Featherly Road because the road narrows there anyway. I expressed some safety concerns about having a bike lane for part of the way and then having it end or having the sidewalk end. And then we just have more congestion in those other areas. So I appreciate the chance to share my view and appreciate really all the township does. I think overall we've lived here 25 years, been a great place to live and raise kids. I guess express some concern over really the need for such an expansive project in a part of town that I think is appreciated the way it is.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it. Kim Mahoney. Kim, I show that you're still muted. All right, Kim, we'll come back to you. Elizabeth Nader.
Hey, thanks for letting me just talk again. I was at the beginning. So I just urge you guys really to consider the snow issue. Some people have gotten it right. Others, I heard someone say it's $5 and 5 minutes. You have to remember that a lot of these lots are very long on the street. And so we're talking about a lot of footage. Not only that, it is a wide street. And the snow plows, I can tell you my mailbox has been taken out twice by the snow plows and by the amount of snow that's been piled up. If I have to maintain that sidewalk with snow, I have 4 teenagers. I don't even think we could do it. It will be, and of course it depends on the winter, right? But it could be incredibly difficult. And for some of our neighbors who have lots even longer than mine, I can't imagine how the town can expect them to maintain that. This is not a street like inside a neighborhood where it's more narrow, there's less snow being dumped. We have a very hard time getting out of our driveway. We have a very hard time digging out of the ice and everything that's dumped on the apron of our driveway by the snowplows in a big storm. So I urge the town to think about the burden you're putting on this particular street and these particular lots and the liability. I think that alone needs to be considered. It is not nothing. And those of us that have lived here 20 plus years will tell you it's extremely, extremely difficult. And I can't imagine us trying to maintain that. Additionally, I would ask that, is there any reconsideration of not taking out our Belgian block apron? Why, can you explain as why that is necessary?
That surface will not meet the ADA standard. So if there's someone on a, for an example, a wheelchair, that it needs to meet the ADA requirements.
And that is wider than the actual sidewalk itself. The entire apron is how wide?
The sidewalk would be 4 foot wide.
And then the apron on the driveway it'll be the same. It'll be say the same width.
Yeah,
so I'm trying to.
The width of your driveway would be maintained.
I mean, the depth of it is what I mean. Is you're taking out the Belgian block all the way to the street, or just a stripe within it? I'm just trying to visualize what you're going to do to our beautiful driveway. It's going to be a stripe of cement of concrete going through it, the width of the sidewalk.
Bernie, just to confirm that, I mean, how did you envision that? I mean, my thoughts were we could go either way on that.
Oh, the way it's set up, we would reset any paver driveway aprons to grade once the concrete sidewalk is set in place to the proper slopes.
So the answer to that is it'll match the width of the sidewalk, 4 feet, which means you would have Belgian block on either side of it.
Correct. I mean, or if you want to do the concrete from the curb to the sidewalk and then the sidewalk and then just maintain the Belgian block behind that, we could do it either way.
Well, I don't really want to do any of it, sadly, because it's going to be ugly, but I just wanted to understand what had been thought about. Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Kim Mahoney, you want to give it a shot again? I saw that you did unmute. And I'm showing you're unmuted now.
Can you hear us?
Yes.
All right, this is John Mahoney. I'm here with Kim Mahoney. We're Normandy Boulevard East. We've been here over 30 years. So we have to use Normandy Parkway quite often, multiple times some days. And we're in favor of the milling and paving. I think, yeah, that's clearly needed. We're also in favor in any activity that can be brought to the table on where you have the crosswalk by Kenilworth and Normandy Boulevard to do that. I mean, I've sat there sometimes coming from Madison Avenue before making the right and seeing people trying to cross. And one day I actually sat there and watched, I think it was 7 cars continue through. There's just no, and that's when we had that middle, the sign in the middle of the road. So there's no respect for that. And I've seen that increase over the years. I think I'm in favor and supporting those individuals that have the impact of the sidewalk not being there. I just, I feel for them in terms of the additional liability, not just the cost of having to maintain that. I think the bike lane, I've lived here long enough. I've seen, what type of, how many times you see a bike on the road, maybe a little bit more than the past, but I just think it's inviting more traffic in terms of pedestrian traffic or bikes to a already somewhat dangerous road, especially congested, especially when you look at it at Washington Avenue onto Normandy. There's mornings when people coming off of Washington don't even stop. They're going to make the right to go to Madison Avenue. And of course, Columbia, as other neighbors have mentioned, is just a very congested and dangerous intersection. So in my opinion, if you're able to maintain the grant that you're getting, which I think is great for the milling and paving, I'm in favor of that. Looking for the additional money for the other 2 parts of the project, I'm not in favor of that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks. I see a Su Ling Yu. I may be butchering that. I apologize if that's the case.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, this is Su Ling Xu. I live in a 3 Featherly Road. I heard what my neighbor said. I am on the same page that I am against the bike lane and the sidewalks that putting on the Normandy Park. The reason being is one is that the traffic flow is going to remain the same. We have walked down. We're trying to walk down from the Normandy Parkway to the Normandy School, and the cars are speeding through. And like the other people have said, the width of it's not going to increase unless you cut into people's property. But on the other reason is that there is a path towards the end of the Featherly Road and Greendale down to the Normandy School. There's always train to blocking it. I think we need to fix it and maintain that path. And that, for people who wants to walk, that is an alternative way from the Featherly down to the Normandy School. And it will be much safer than having the kids thinking about, the sidewalk of being safe on the Normandy Park, which is not. The cars are speeding through. I hate to see, any accident happen. And every time I walk down with my 10 years old Emma and Elsa, we have to hold their hands really tight. And, it's not safe with the speed of the cars going down. That's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jim, I'll just throw in there too that she's correct. And actually the master plan does show Featherly for future multi-use paths, basically sidewalk and bicycle access leading over to the school somehow through the back area. That's for future multi-use paths per the master plan, same as what Normandy is proposing.
Sean Riley?
I'm back again. Sorry, I was a little discombobulated picking up my son from his basketball game. So I just drove by the intersection Columbia and Normandy Parkway where the sidewalk is going to go. So if I'm 26, there's 28, and then I guess that's 30 where the house sits kind of down along, kind of facing Columbia Turnpike. There's less than 4 feet to before the whole property drops off. Like across the street from the museum on Normandy Parkway, that corner, Columbia Turnpike and Normandy Park. How are you going to have a sidewalk finish up at that area? Because there's less than 4 feet between the road and the cliff that goes down into that gentleman's property.
So there's some grading that has to occur at that location.
So okay. There's grading to do to get to 4 feet and then have the sidewalk. So you're actually going to bring in like land. You're going to create land there. You're going to bring in fill.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel sorry for my neighbor. And there already is a crosswalk at Normandy and Columbia on our side of so there's a crosswalk going across Normandy Parkway, horizontal to Columbia Turnpike, right? So even if you ran the sidewalk, you wouldn't have to go across the street and do a retaining wall. You could cross the street on Normandy Parkway, where there is a marked crosswalk, and then cross Columbia Turnpike to the museum. So there's no need for a retaining wall, as far as I could see. Would you agree with that?
And you're saying if a sidewalk is put on the opposite side of the roadway, I wasn't quite sure where you're going with that.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want a sidewalk, period, but I just don't understand the utility of the sidewalk where you have to bring in landfill to fill up somebody's yard to put a sidewalk when you already have a crosswalk at that area. And if you ran the sidewalk where you wouldn't have to have multiple crosswalks on a very busy street. If the sidewalk was on the opposite side, right, you would not have to have a crosswalk at Featherly and the school.
To install the sidewalk in front of 29 on the opposite side would require retaining walls. That's the issue.
Retaining walls, you just said you were going to bring in landfill and raise a gentleman's property. That's going to require a wall too.
That's at number 30.
That's going to require a wall as well, no?
No, that's why we're doing it. That's one of the reasons for doing it on that side is to bring in, a truckload or two of material.
Okay.
To
So I'll just go on to the next question because none of this makes any sense to me. So when I pull my leaves out to my front street where the town's going to pick them up, so one of the reasons I pay taxes here is have my leaves picked up in the front of the house. So what's the story there? I'm going to brush them right into the shoulder like they currently do now. Now there's a bike lane there. What's the story with that?
Well, I mean, technically the ordinance does not allow for leaves to be stored in the roadway.
They pick them up. The town picks them up. I have it on the schedule in the calendar. The calendar that you guys send out every year.
There's the 4 foot shoulder, and obviously some of them are going to end up in the road. It's unavoidable.
Right.
Okay, so no problem putting the leaves in the lane. No ordinance violation, none of that crap, right?
As long as you have some of them in that 4 foot shoulder, you're good.
4 foot shoulder before the bike lane?
Between the sidewalk and the curb, there's a 4 foot strip there. That's, if some of it's in that way and some of it's
the leaves are way bigger than 4 feet. The leaves are on these proproperties.
Yeah, I'm acknowledging that some of it's going to be in the roadway, and I don't see that.
It's going to be in the bike lane, right? So, like somebody said earlier, we want all this in writing. Like somebody's word doesn't mean anything. No offense, Jim. I appreciate your word, and if we were doing business together, person to person, I accept your word. But this is a town where you might not be the engineer 9 months from now for whatever reason, and the word doesn't carry forward. So all this stuff that we're talking about, liability, maintenance, where the leaves go, where my landscaper right now parks in the shoulder like everybody else is on the street once a week and does his job. Is that a problem now?
I don't see that changing.
So he's going to be in the bike lane.
And the bikers will have to figure out how to get around him.
Just think about that for a second.
He's already parked in the bike lane. It's just not marked.
That's called the shoulder.
The shoulder
That's the
is
shoulder
used,
of the road.
the shoulder
right?
is used for pedestrians and bicyclists. We're
Right.
to
Okay.
make it
So I
safer
guess we don't need a
by
sidewalk.
marking it.
I guess we don't need a sidewalk then if it's used for pedestrians and
No,
bicyclists.
the reason we're putting sidewalk in is to get them away from the traffic because it's safer.
Get who? Who's walking on Normandy? I don't know how to, like, there's so many different things that come up that I'll probably raise my hand 10 more times before we're done. So right now we're going to get an ordinance like leeway. We're going to get something in writing that says I can put my leaves in the bike lane every fall because we have huge oak trees that drop leaves, and that's what we do.
I can tell you that's not going to happen, Sean.
Okay, well, I'm just going to put them in the front of the house, and now all of a sudden it's going to be a problem?
I don't think it's a problem.
You don't think it's a problem, but what you're saying is that if I do and there's a bike lane and there's a sidewalk and all this, that now it's a problem.
I'm saying put them in the 4-foot area and some of it's going to spill into the road. It's unavoidable.
Okay, and the town will come pick them up, but the problem is they want them on the road because they use, have you seen how they do this?
I'm quite familiar with how they do it.
Okay, so how are you?
And they're technically not supposed to be on the road, but I mean, you're not going to pile them
Do you
up on
see
the
how,
sidewalk.
whoa, Jim, how do they collect the leaves? Refresh me.
With a big machine that's got a claw on the front and then they blow them off the yard into the road and they pick them up off the road with the machine.
Right, they scrape the whole road down the shoulder that we have right now. So if it's on the grass, you're telling me they're going to blow them in the road and still scrape them down the bike path?
Yeah, that's what they do right now. They blow them and rake them into the road and they pick them up.
Okay. So we can just
Let
do the
me ask
same
a
thing.
question on this. Is it the recommendation that leaves are to be placed on the grass and not on the road?
That's correct. Actually, it's a DEP requirement for all towns as part of their stormwater management.
It's not well known. Most people do put their leaves on the street, but technically, according to the official recommendation, they're supposed to be put on the not on the street, correct?
Right.
That's correct. But I mean, you're not going to pile them up on the sidewalk either. And, you know, there's going to be some spillover onto the street.
Just so, Kathy, I think that was you, like,
Yes.
so we're clear, they take a huge, it looks like a backhoe, but it's bigger. And they basically pick up the leaves. They ride down the street slowly and pick up all the leaves and put them into the mulching machine.
Yes.
So if it's on the grass, like, you're just going to rip up I don't even know how the machine would do that.
You don't do that.
No, they blow them off. They blow them off the lawn and they rake them and they put them in the roadway and they pick it up off the roadway.
Okay. So just for reference, in the area, as we're talking about sidewalks, Convent Station area, around Old Glen. Old Glen is kind of I'd say a similar passageway, is not nearly as busy, but it gets a lot of traffic.
Yes.
Double lane road. That whole development there since 1960, whenever it was developed, does not have sidewalks. Not one street there has sidewalks. Maybe if you get over to Woodland, I think it's across the street, but that whole development doesn't have sidewalks. Is there plans to put sidewalks in over there?
No.
Right. Okay. That would seem like a lot better place to go walk than 40 mile an hour. The last question, and I'll raise my hand again after people get to speak, but how many emergency ambulance type vehicles come down Normandy Parkway on average every day?
I mean, I don't know that number offhand. I mean, it could be a dozen. If I just had to
Oh,
guess.
a dozen? I think a dozen go by in less than 20 minutes during the day. coming
Less
from
than
all
20
different Atlantic.
minutes. So you have
Jim, I'm
hundreds and
telling you,
hundreds of
you should
emergency
put a
vehicles
camera
going
up.
by every day.
You should put a camera up on our street, because you laugh, but I'm telling you, there are ambulances during the work week that are moving people around Atlantic Health System coming down our street all the time. Some of them are in
And this
emergency
project
and
is
they're
not
flying
going
down
to
the street.
affect that whatsoever.
I'm sorry?
This project's not going to affect that whatsoever.
Well, it's interesting because earlier you said that as you narrow the road, people tend to slow, but at the same time, your first responders were saying that narrowing the road doesn't bother them. They go as fast as they want.
Well, I mean, they have to obey traffic laws as well. I'm a volunteer fireman. I drive the fire truck down that road. I don't see that being a problem.
Okay. All right. I'll let somebody else go.
Sachin, I see you're got your hand raised again.
Yes, thank you very much for the time. I just wanted to clarify. So now that you've listened to the views of the neighborhood, I just wanted to understand what happens next. I'm assuming you go back, you decide that you still proceed with the project as one option, and the other option is you change it. Now, if you change it, I don't mind, that's fine. And you change it as that meets our requirements. But if you do decide to proceed, what recourse do I have or do we have to stop the project?
I don't think you have any recourse. We own the right of way, and it's if the township committee decides to move forward, you know, with and keep the bike lane in and keep the sidewalk in, then that's what's going to happen.
Okay. Thank you for that response. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Yep. Lou Rothman. Lou, I see you have your hand raised as Zoom user. Pretty sure that was Lou Rothman.
Good.
We hear you now, Lou.
Yeah, that's an error. I must have pressed the hand a second time.
All right, thanks. Sorry about that.
Okay. No problem.
Patricia Collins.
Hi, Pat Collins. I'm at 4 Green Knolls Road. And you mentioned all the comments tonight and the questions will be taken up by the township committee. My question is, will we have input into that? Can we attend? And will there be a public session that we can talk about it?
This is the public session.
So there'll be, okay. So what somebody just said, and I agree with him, what's next? It almost looks like this is the first meeting and other people will have a lot more questions. And I hope there will be another public meeting because it sounds as though there's a lot more questions that people will come up with. And all of a sudden, you know, this is presented to us and, you know, we don't have time to digest everything. And I think I'll be coming up with some more questions too. And then that was my question, if we have input, but, you know, at first I was all for this. I thought, oh, how fabulous, you know, bike paths and this, but when I listened to all my neighbors and the people on Normandy Parkway, it sounds like it's going to create more problems. And, you know, our Congress is famous for taking money and building bridges to nowhere. But I think when people said this is to nowhere, it is to nowhere. It's just one strip. So thank you for listening.
Dick Edwards.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Question I have is, it seems that 98% of the people that have spoken tonight are objecting to this project, but my sense is that you're saying that this is a fait accompli, it is going to go forward?
I didn't say that.
You kind of implied that.
Jim, you want me to go?
I think so. Yeah, it's probably
All
worth
right, and I apologize for missing most of this meeting. I did have to respond to a fire situation. After this meeting, it's being recorded. We will share the recording with the rest of the members of the Township Committee to review and hear the comments from you and your neighbors, which are important to us. The Township Committee will then discuss and get a consensus on whether or not to proceed as the plan is currently laid out, or whether or not to amend it. And then the next step would be to then go out to bid, should, depending on whatever the final version of the plan is. Members of the public can always come to our monthly meetings to provide public comment, should you feel the need to. I don't have the exact timing on when we would actually go out to bid. We did get, like we've said before, money from the state to fund this, and we do have a timeline on that to put it into fruition to use that funding. So, like I would say, we'll take the recording, we'll share it amongst the other committee members. Both Kathy and I will speak to them and relay the concerns stated during this meeting. And we will come up with a decision on whether or not to proceed as is, or to amend the plans and work with the engineering department to get to that point.
So what you're saying is that we've just participated in a 2.5-hour kabuki dance.
Okay, let's.
No, I would not. So, this input, like I said, it's being recorded. The members of the committee will review it. And if they feel strongly one way or another, the plan may be amended.
Thank you.
All right, I see a number of hands raised. I'm going to go to people that have not spoken yet. I see Robert has a hand raised.
Yes, hi. This is Robert Cole. I'm at 22 Normandy Parkway. I'm sorry, my connection may be poor because I'm out of the country right now, but I wanted to commend the committee for listening to everybody. At first, I had thought that it was an overwhelming support for this project, and after I tallied up the number of people that commented tonight, I probably have a count of at least 21 people that are against the project as is, and maybe one person that might be in favor of it, but with some serious modifications. So I'm satisfied that all my neighbors had a chance to speak. I am pretty much not in favor of this project. I have lived at Normandy Parkway there at 22 for the past 38 years, and we fought many times to preserve the historic nature of the area. In fact, getting the whole area designated on the National Registry as a historic site. So I like it the way it is. That's just like I think it was Sue Shelley said that she moved there specifically because of the nature. Elizabeth Nader said that she picked the neighborhood specifically because of the way it looked and felt. And I think in my letters to the committees this past week, I've said that if I wanted to live in a neighborhood that had sidewalks, bike lanes, parking meters, I would have moved downtown. It's a very inviting neighborhood downtown, but it's not the way I wanted to choose to live. So I basically am against the project, other than repaving the street as it's written, repaving the street and designating bicycle lanes. But any other modifications of the street, I'd like to have it returned to the way it was when I first moved there, with a beautiful tree-lined avenue. That's what I moved to Normandy Parkway for. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob.
Jim, thank you, Mr. Cole, for providing your comment and joining us from far away while you're abroad. Jim, do we have any members of the public who have not spoken yet who have their hands up?
I see two. I see a Patricia Collins and then someone with a Patricia Collins did. Yeah, there was a
Are we,
Yahoo address, but they just went
are we on
away.
second
I see
rounds or are we wrapping up second rounds?
We
Yeah.
are on second rounds.
Some are going into third. I see a Fantelek.
Okay, let's stick with the second rounds for now. And we'll see where we are when we're done with the second rounds.
So Fantelek, you're up next.
Hi, it's Frank Antelek from 3 Featherly Road. From what I've heard today, it seems like the safety issues outweigh the benefits. And to go backwards, I've lived here over 10 years and I see what goes on Normandy. And really, on a daily basis, I've really only seen one girl walk down towards the hospital way from Featherly. It's not like there's a lot of foot traffic that I notice on Normandy or bike traffic. So I'm just wondering if it's needed, So that's my comment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Antelek.
Mark, do you want to comment or do you, it might be a time for us to make some comments?
Yeah, if we're done with round twos, then yeah, when we go ahead and do that and noticing it's getting late, I think we'll then wrap up. So did Pat Collins go twice or did she go once?
We have about 4 or 5 people that have gone once and want to go a second time.
Okay, let's let those folks go their second time and then we'll wrap up.
Hold on.
Patricia Collins.
Yes, thank you again, everyone. Patricia Collins, 4 Green Knolls Road. And I just would please somebody give me some clarification. Mr. Slate, I thought said this was the public meeting and that would be it. And yet, Mr. Mayor, did you say that we could have further input? Would someone please clarify? Because I don't think I'm the only one who needs that clarification.
Sure, Pat. This is the public information session specifically dedicated to the plans as we're looking at them now on the screen and talking through the questions. What I stated before, and I'll clarify as best as I can, is every month the Township Committee meets at our monthly meeting and there's a public comment period at the end for general comments. Should members of the public wish to provide general commentary during that meeting, they are more than welcome to do so, as every member of every resident of the township is allowed to. We will not be going in depth with this project like we are tonight. But just like everyone has the right to provide public commentary every month to us, so too do the members of your neighborhood and those on the call if they wish to further provide their opinions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Pat.
Rich Tangle up next.
Yes, can you hear me, Jim?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for having me again. Yeah, I just want to emphasize, and I can't emphasize enough, I guess, is just what I see is with generating a nuisance that's going to affect public safety. And just to go follow through on what my one neighbor said, that he sees one person walking typically. Over the few years, I see like 3 people. There's an older woman, a younger woman, and a middle-aged guy. I kind of see them generally. So I walk on the traction path and I see at least the older woman makes it to the traction path and walks along there. And she crosses Columbia. They all do, those 3. And that's generally all I see. But I pray for that because it's like Columbia from Normandy. It's such a dangerous crossing. And just again, people are not following the turn lanes and all that. It's just such a hazard. And I think putting a sidewalk in, and certainly the bike lane for sure, you're just adding pedestrians and bikes to this hazarded mix of cars and people. And I just don't feel it's a good engineering idea to do this. And it's going to impact negatively public safety by creating this attractive nuisance, I'll call it. And one thing I just want to make sure, I'm sure you're aware, but just to say it, that regarding the repaving, which certainly it does need, there is heading from Friendly's coming north on Normandy. There's like a bad manhole there. That's a bump and people swerve to avoid that. And then just past Kenilworth, there's some issue there. Every time it rains, water is bubbling up, and there's some pipe there possibly, but that's like another bump in the road, I'll call it. And then also by Featherly Road, that drain there becomes Lake Featherly, I call it. It's clogged. There's some issue with the drain pipe there. Something's crushed or clogged, but those issues need to be addressed in the contract documents as part of the repaving. That's my suggestion.
Yeah, they're included as part of the project. There's a pipe replacement at that intersection there to correct that problem. So that's included.
Okay, and then and I'll throw an idea out there, but just because I hate to see people cross Normandy by the other neighborhood toward the New Jersey Transit Bridge, maybe transit could be lobbied to put a stairway on the other side of the bridge, so you can go down the stair on one, go under the Normandy, come up the other side. Just a thought, but it's just want to go on record with that. So thank you.
Thanks.
I wanted to say Jim Kavanaugh has just reached out, and he is unable to be recognized. I don't see him on our list, so I'm wondering if he can he call in some way? How can he be heard?
I don't think we have a way.
I see his email address, I think.
You?
JimLC@yahoo.com.
Can we, is that Mr. Kavanaugh, can we recognize him? If it is, he's reached out and let me know he's got his hand up and not being recognized.
He doesn't have his hand up.
Hand is not raised.
Yeah,
they're saying that your hand is not raised.
Jessica, second time.
Yeah, hi, I just hold on.
Go ahead, Jessica.
Kathy, can you go on mute?
Hold on. Yes, sorry.
Oh, the only thing that I was going to add is I just keep hearing a lot of people talk about how it's a road, a bike lane, and a pedestrian walkway to nowhere. And I guess for me, the point is just people do use it. I, as I said before, I'm a cyclist. I cycle at least twice a week, year round. So I'm on Normandy Parkway quite often on my bike. It would just make it safer for people. I mean, it doesn't matter that it goes anywhere. It's actually just making the road safer for people to use who do use it. So I don't know that it necessarily needs to go anywhere. And I just want to also say, I really do appreciate the town and you guys taking the time to listen to everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mark Malaya.
Hey gang, Mark Malaya. I'm at 5 in Normandy Parkway, and I'm, to be honest, fairly ambivalent about the sidewalk and the bike lane. I mean, I'm with a slight lean toward it, maybe, but what I do care about is the aesthetics of the project, and I think all of us here, in the neighborhood are very proud to live here, and because of the beauty. I mean, it's known for the beauty of the street, and I just wondered where on the timeline is the spot for, like, whatever it is that happens, for us to weigh in on the aesthetics, like if there was a sidewalk or not, but if there was, what does it look like, or could we add some tree, just anything like that, just weigh in on those things.
Sidewalks fairly standard, 4-foot wide concrete.
Well, no, you mentioned about potentially tinting it or something to make it a little more attractive.
It's not painted. Sometimes there's the ability to tint it, to change the color a little bit, but I would lean away from that.
Oh. All right, so there isn't really much to think about, is what you're saying.
Yeah. Yes, that's correct.
All right.
Thank you. Simon Wang, please.
Hi, Simon Huang, 19 Green Knolls. I just had a question. On these sidewalks, the maintenance of the sidewalks, so there are plenty of trees by these sidewalks. if there's branches that fall.
Simon, I apologize. I may have muted you by accident. Do you want to start
It's
over?
okay. Sure. The maintenance of the sidewalk itself, if there are tree branches or a tree fells on the sidewalk, who's the one that actually has to maintain that or remove it? Is it a town or is it the property owner?
If the tree is located in the right of way, I would say it's the town's responsibility.
Okay, and it sounds like there's federal funding for this. So my question is, later on, if we have to fix these sidewalks or if it cracks or anything like that, we're using town money to do that, then, correct?
It's actually state funding, not federal funding.
I'm sorry. Yep.
And if there were some tripping hazards that were created by the street trees, the town would repair that. Other than that, it's the property owner's responsibility.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Is that it for
Samantha?
second?
Hi, Sean brought up a really interesting thought to me, which was when we were talking about the funds for this project. The funds, it sounds like, and I know this is complicated, but it sounds like the funds were for the repaving and the restriping and all of that, and that DOT likes that we also are putting in sidewalks and bike lanes. However, it seems like our choice of materials for the sidewalks and this idea of a stone path instead of, a hard sidewalk is not possible because we have to do ADA compliance. It's also why we have to, I know we have cobblestone at the end of our drive too. Would have to have our driveway aprons and our landscaping disrupted like that. So I'm wondering if we don't use state funds specifically for the sidewalk, and in the budget line instead, the sidewalk funds come from the municipality, can we make this not a standard sidewalk and have it something else similar to what Honeywell has? Therefore, we also do not have to shovel it.
I think part of the other problem is what do you do at driveways? The ADA ramps, we would still have to do that. They'd have to be concrete. But then as you go through the driveway, you're going to have concrete. You can't, obviously, you're not going to run a stone dust through there. So I think it starts to look strange if you have, a concrete sidewalk, then you go to a stone dust, and you go back. In my view, that's kind of strange.
Eliminate the concrete completely and basically just, instead of calling it a sidewalk, it's a walking path so that people can safely walk down Normandy, not in the road, but we don't have the infrastructure, liability, and all of that that's related to a traditional sidewalk, because we're not a traditional neighborhood. We're a historic street. So accomplishing the goal of getting people out of the street who wish to walk and providing them someplace safe, but not having, I hate to say the word, but the ugliness of a sidewalk and, quite frankly, the liability of having to shovel that monster.
Unfortunately, it doesn't matter whether it's local funds, state funds, or federal funds. All government entities are required to follow the federal requirements for public sidewalk for ADA compliance.
Okay.
Thanks, Samantha.
Thanks, Samantha. Jim, are we done with second rounds?
No, I still have.
Jim Kavanaugh has not spoken yet. Can he call in? Is there a number that he can call? Because every time I try to connect at my end, I lose the connection. So is there a number that he can call into?
Is there a number on that Zoom? Is there a Zoom number as part of the Zoom? I don't know.
Yes, he can dial 1-929-205-6099, and then he's going to have to enter in the webinar ID and passcode.
Okay.
Dr. Rieger?
Thank you for hearing me again. I just want to thank again the service that you have to the community, and I understand the intention of this project. I just want to make sure, and now I understand it's recorded, so you'll be able to hear it, Mayor, and I thank you for your service in the fire department. But I just want to confirm that you've heard from the people who actually live on the Parkway. Kathy is not here. I was hoping that she would hear this too, but that you've heard from the people who live on the street that the sidewalks, a path is nice, but nobody is interested in having a sidewalk for the aesthetics, the historical perspective, which is the jewel of the community, that it is a hazard for acutely and long-term with lifting of trees and the liability, which we become targets because it's a well-known neighborhood, plus the increased risk of pedestrians, which unfortunately I see the accidents of, with having bicycling and pedestrians. Was that heard loud and clear, I hope, Mayor?
Yep, I can definitely acknowledge that I've heard those arguments.
Okay, thank you very much. And again, I thank you for your time and your service and making yourselves available for a public hearing to hear what your constituents have to say. Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I apologize I had to depart, but I will watch the parts that I missed.
No apologize for doing your service. I thank you for doing your service. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Rieger. Jim, do you want to go to Jim Kavanaugh?
One more for Simon Wong.
Okay, let's go to him and then Jim.
Sorry, I should have asked that earlier, but I think some of the other residents had concerns about actually making a left or right onto Normandy, depending on where you're going on to. If this project does move forward, I was wondering, is there any way we can have on the lane, sometimes they have those do not block intersection or do not block areas so that we actually have a little bit more room to actually make that left or right turn safely onto Normandy Parkway?
So are you saying that the intersection backs up and blocks the Featherly, intersection? Is that what you're talking about?
Correct. Yeah. And sometimes there's cars that's nice. They'll let you go, but you can't make that left turn because you can't really see what's going on the right-hand side. So is there any way we can have signs that says don't block this intersection so that we don't have that huge backup?
We can take a look at that. We just have to make sure it meets all the, requirements, MUTCD and DOT. That's something we can look at.
Okay, I appreciate it. Thank you.
So I think we've heard from everyone, at least twice. And
yeah, Jim, we're going up at 9 o'clock. I'd like us to wrap it to get people back, off the screens at a reasonable hour. But I do want to get Jim Kavanaugh on since he's been having technical difficulties. If we can get him on.
Is his number 539-8642 or 270-3742? Do you know offhand?
3742.
Mr. Kavanaugh. We're
Hello.
Jimmy there, we can hear you.
Oh, there he is.
Yes, I'll be very brief. Thank you very much. I'm a 53-year resident. I was the chairman of the ADA. I had encouraged opening this up to not only Normandy Park, but the adjoining neighborhoods. Very pleased with all the input and so forth. I have 5 quick comments. Since I've been here the 53 years, I can basically indicate that this is one of the riskiest places to be adding bicycle to the roadway. We've testified basically among all the residents, 98% of those inputs I would basically agree with. And so I would be basically suggesting that when you go ahead for the funds, that you break it into requesting the state funds for the repaving of the road And then separately, you take further time to take a look at the other aspects. So safety is the one aspect. The second thing is on the historical district. I think it's something that's been a gem. I moved here 53 years ago because of what I saw. I think it's worth preserving. I would encourage everyone that's deciding this from the township committee to put themselves in the shoes of the residents that are basically speaking, whether they were pro or con. The sidewalks, I think that it's going to cause more problems. I think that Samantha's suggestion as to making it more of a natural type setting may solve that, especially if it's not part of the state funding. There may be a way of solving that. Sue Salcelli's suggestions, different other ones were very good. My concern about the maintenance on the sidewalks, I would suggest that the township really has to consider what their liability would be to lift it off of the shoulders of those that would have to maintain it as the property owners, because we're forcing this on them. The other thing I would suggest to the overall project, that we give two estimates, one for the cost of the road and what the incremental income would be from the state on that. Even if it's less than that, I think that's the necessary piece of the project. The other thing is to take a look at the cost as to each of these other aspects, because we don't have an idea in terms of that. I commend everyone. It's really pleasant to hear the different thoughts. One of the recent things is, because I'm the head of the neighborhood watch for the 104 people, 7 of the houses on Normandy Parkway, 2 on Columbia, and the others in Featherly and Green Knolls. And while I can't speak for everyone, some of those are bicyclists, some are walkers, but I think most of us would agree that you have unsafe conditions, and particularly if you're trying to come out of the Featherly and Green Knolls onto Normandy to make a left-hand turn is an accident waiting to happen if you add basically bicyclists to it. The box is not doable, as Sue Salcelli had mentioned, because of the dangerous intersection. And so those are my thoughts. I'm just going to make one correction to some gentleman who thought that maybe this was kabuki. I don't think this is any kabuki at all. I think our representatives are basically listening, and I trust them to make the best decision that they can. Thank you for opening this up to all the public. We respect you, and we know that you're going to do the best for us. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim.
You, appreciate your comments as always. Jim, Slate, since we went through everyone with second rounds and some people spoke third, but I'm glad we got 2 rounds in for most people that wanted it. We're wrapping up at 9. So Kathy, did you want to provide any concluding remarks? Well, I guess, let me open up for Jim and Bernie and anyone else who wants to open up for closing before we adjourn.
No, I have no other comments. I mean, other than, I think I answered whatever questions I could, and, there'll be further discussion amongst us on it.
Okay. Thank you for all your work on this and going through all the plans and details. Kathy, I'll turn it over for you.
Yeah, thanks. I want everyone to know I've been listening very carefully to everyone's comments. It's been helpful to me to understand, everyone's views. I've taken extensive notes. I'm going to give this very serious consideration. I'm hearing loud and clear a very strong concern with the safety of the bike lanes. I'm hearing a lot of people who are not in favor of the sidewalks, but are not as concerned about the sidewalks for the safety is not as concerning as the bike lanes. I will say that, this tonight's meeting is the neighbors who live on the street and will be, have the most impact from this project. This project, as was mentioned, has been discussed across our community for many years. It is in the 2008 master plan. It's recommended. There's about 10 streets in that plan that are recommended for sidewalks. The goal being to make our town more walkable for pedestrians and more connected, more easy to get around for bicyclists. That those same streets were repeated in the 2017 master plan review. They were referenced in the 2008 trails plan. The TAC committee, Transportation Advisory Committee, did a survey in 2020 and 750 people responded, and there was overwhelming support for taking action to make our town more user-friendly for walkers and bicyclists. And so that's kind of the context where this project has come up. But I realize that people who live on the street have different concerns than people who live on the other side of town. So that's where I've been, I appreciate everyone taking the time to share their concerns. And I want you to know I've listened very carefully. I do think that the shoveling, like what to do about shoveling, I can see us giving that some additional attention. To me, there's options there for dealing with that could be considered. And I'd like us to do that. I also, many particular details like the piling up of the snow and the placement of the leaves, all of these things are really good points that need to be, considered and thought about. And so we will be taking all of your questions and comments and considering everything and going from there. So I'm kind of assuming we may have some discussion of this at our next township committee meeting, possibly. I don't know.
I would say to be determined which meeting we're discussing. It depends on when we reach a consensus and when we need to get it out to bid.
Okay. But I'd like to thank everyone for joining tonight, and I really appreciated your participation, and I listened very carefully to everything you had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Wilson. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for 3 hours tonight. I apologize that I had to leave for a portion of tonight's meeting. Like I said before, I will go back and watch the recording of the parts where I was absent, and we will be sharing this with the rest of the members of the Township Committee. As I stated previously, and Kathy mentioned, walkability and bikeability and making sure our township is connected as best as we can make it is a priority for our governing body. It is a priority for our residents, as shown through the resident survey we put out. But like Kathy said too, you guys shoulder a little bit more of the burden with the project being proposed in your own front yards and on your own street and on your own block. So we will absolutely share your concerns and input with the rest of the committee. As I stated previously, it's up to the committee to decide whether or not to accept the proposal as is, or whether or not to ask the engineering department to look into different things to amend. Once we reach a consensus, we will share that with the neighborhood. And I would imagine we would be having a discussion in one of our township committee meetings. I just don't know when exactly that will be. We'll have to discuss that amongst each other as a group before we do that, but we will do our best to keep our neighbors informed on that. I did want to note one other thing, as we stated before, and I really hope people take advantage of this. Preserving, we talked a lot about the historic integrity of the street. And for those who may want trees to have shade, not just for now, but 10 to 20 years from now, and to keep that canopy on Normandy Parkway and retain, the historic nature of the street, I highly recommend you take advantage of the opportunity to have trees put on your frontage of your property at no cost. That's not an investment for now, it's an investment in the future. For whether or not it's your kids or grandkids or the future owners of your homes, I really urge you to take advantage of that opportunity. With that, if there's no other comments from the panelists, then I'll just move to close the meeting, and we will keep everyone informed of next steps. All right, thank you, Jim Slade. Thank you, Bernie. Thank you, Tim Quinn.
Thanks, everyone. Okay, that's it.
Right. Good night, everyone.
Good night. Thanks.
Good night.